so I can see the screen. How are you? Oh, surely you must have more favorites than me. And welcome to a cautionary tale on shopping on Amazon. This was supposed to be holding my phone right now, and instead of buying a good one, I decided to buy the Amazon recommends one for $7.99. And it came yesterday, and I was really excited to mount it to my tripod here. And as you can see, it's in two pieces now. And the reason for that is when I was exiting the parking garage, I was balancing the tripod and everything. And I'm walking out. It's one of those doors with the strut. So as you push the door open, it'll pull shut. And I broke it. So if you're in the, ever in the mood to buy a phone thing, and you buy one of those brands on Amazon that only exists for that specific product, So it looked like I saw a hello from Indiana, a hello from Japan, a hello from Switzerland, a hello from Indiana Beach. Indiana has a beach? Your player won't load. You refresh it. You'll get it. Hello from Canada. Hello from the Philippines, St. Louis, Carmel, Indiana. Just going in circles there. Carmel's famous for being all roundabouts. Bangkok. Hello from the toilet. And SoCal, Detroit, Monticello, Indiana, SoCal, Chicago, Belgium, New Zealand, Philadelphia, Australia. Hey, this is great. Well, I was going to complain about it being a little bit cold. My costume that I wear on camera doesn't really go with a coat. And so when I filmed in Connecticut over a year ago, I still haven't been able to edit the footage yet. And it was cold because it was Connecticut, And I caught a cold. That's when I caught COVID, was because I was let my immune system down, because I thought, well, this is the outfit that you expect to see me in, so I'm going to go out there on the side of a freeway and film in front of it. So it's cold. But okay, now Florida, you're the one I can be jealous of. Tampa, it's a little bit warmer here. Cal's in the midst of a snowstorm, as are a lot of people right now. So I really can't complain. There's a saying about San Francisco, which is where I am right now, that the coldest winter you'll ever feel is summertime in San Francisco. And it sounds stupid. I grew up in Salt Lake City. We get snow, we have a real winter, and so I'm not used to these dumb sayings. And then I came and visited here in the summer one time, and I don't know if it's the humidity or a slight breeze, or you're thinking it's California, so it's going to be warm, but it is quite cold. So behind me here, a few of you've noticed what street this is. It's the crookedest street in the world. 8 turns. It's almost as windy as Carmel, Indiana, except they straightened it out, so you just keep going in the same direction. This is Lombard Street. Lombard's a long street. I think it even carries part of U.S. Highway 101 when you get over the hill. You stay on this road, you end up out at the Golden Gate Bridge. And then going this way, you end up downtown. And what happened here is this street, I'll kind of carry you over with my janky tripod here. In fact, I'll just flip the camera for a second to show you. It makes 8 turns. So you can see, you've seen it in movies where it just zigzags back and forth. Lots of tourists. And that's because going down that hill, if you were to come at it straight, is a 27% grade. To give you some idea, your staircase in your house is a 30% grade. So it's basically like trying to drive your car downstairs. And so I was looking up this street because I wanted to talk a little bit about it, and I really didn't know that much about it other than driving up and down it in a stick shift, which was fun. Did that a few years ago. And I found a woman who put together a website called SF City Guides, and she dug through some old newspapers. Her name is Susan Saperstein. And unfortunately, her article's gone, but if you go to Wikipedia and click in the sources, somebody grabbed it and put it on archive.org. Now, the good news, Jack, is that no, it's not up and down. It's just down. But at one point, when this road first opened, it was up and down. It was a two-way street. That changed in the 1930s. And so I'm going to just show you a photo here that she found. So I give her credit. In fact, it's the same one that was on the thumbnail. You have, you kind of see, get out of the way here, the before and after. This is in 1922 when the road was getting built. Yeah, it's a little bit of a nightmare to go up and down, but compared to 27% grade of just attacking it straight on, it wasn't possible. So San Francisco, I see this picture, and I see it's got a bunch of vacant lots off to the side, and I'm thinking, oh, neat. I'm thinking like somebody from Southern California, where, you know, history begins at about 1950, and saying, oh, that's when it finally got developed. It was a vacant lot, but that's not true. If you remember history, 1906 was the great fire after the big earthquake, and most of the city just got totally clobbered. From the downtown area all the way up the hill to about here. And this side of the street survived, although the original buildings are gone, but that side didn't. In fact, the row of houses that were along there, the fire department demolished them because they wanted to create a fire break. The fire was so bad in the 1906 earthquake that they were destroying, it was like Sim City. They were going through and demolishing perfectly good homes on purpose to stop the fire. And so the guy who bought it up after the fire was a guy named Carl Henry. He had a bunch of like, oh, hold on, my chats went away. Sorry, I haven't been responding to them. I'm just kind of geeking out here, but chats, come back here. There we go. I am reading them. I'm just geeking out about Lombard Street, so I'll get to him in a second. So Carl Henry owned all this land, and it wasn't worth as much money because a car couldn't go up and down the street. Let's see, Jack says, fun fact, they also demolished them with dynamite, which helped the fire spread more. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. We got to get rid of this thing quick, so we'll blow it up. I've got the picture here somewhere, if you can see. It's a newspaper archive, so it's not great, but you've got the city. This is so much nicer. I can just show it to you as a nice, pretty, finished video rather than having all these, you know, old photos and things here. Talk about this guy in a minute. This is the drugstore guy. He's the one who bought up all the land on most of this block, both sides of this street, after the fire. And he wanted to make some more money off of this thing. So he said, well, you know, if I can get a car going up and down past these lots, the lots will go for more money. This was, you know, after 1915 when Model Ts showed up and all of a sudden everybody could buy cars and cars were going everywhere. And it wasn't that there wasn't an idea to kind of terrace the street and zigzag back and forth. That's a really old idea. Oh, I take that back. I'm wrong. This is some guy named Parsons. We'll get to him in a minute. That's not the drugstore guy. I don't have this picture. But, oh, I found it. Not the picture, but the fire wiped out everything. And you say, well, this is a really low quality photo. I can't see anything. Well, no, it's not a low quality photo. There's nothing to see. The whole city is just gone. And that's about where we're standing right here. And that's where you start to see a couple of buildings again. It just completely just clobbered the city. And it's San Francisco, you take a look at this too, is a fascinating place to begin with anyway, because you took small mountains and normally you'd build a road, and, you know, not modern day, you'd come in and you'd build like a big boulevard that goes around this way. Oh, thank you to Liz. Somehow you sent me $5 and I'm not sure how, but you did. That's great. Thank you. It's like I'm down there on the street dancing for tips. I see you dancing. But the hubris we had as human beings after 1850 to say, well, I know this area is really mountainous, but just lay the grid right on top of it. And on the one hand, grids are wonderful because it's a very direct way to walk from the parking garage that, you know, ate my tripod to here. was very direct. I didn't go out of my way. I did, however, have to walk up some really gnarly hills trying to get up here, and I was glad I got here a few minutes early because I was kind of out of breath. But it's just fascinating. We don't build cities this way today, and this will be another video sometime because I got to research it better, but after World War II, and starting in the 1920s, there was a lot of talk kind of at the federal level of saying we really shouldn't treat the landscape like it's a machine and just lay our grid on top of it. We should kind of curve the road and work with the natural landscape. And now we've done that to the point where it's the other way around, where you can't walk anywhere because everything's really windy and nice. If you've ever been out to California, north of LA is Santa Clarita. I've mentioned it in videos before because it's sort of the like stereotypical American suburb. $1 from Jesse. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's neat. I didn't know that. So is there like a button that you can push? I'd heard that you could do that, but I've never done it. That or Jesse charged me $1. But Santa Clarita is the type of place. Oh my gosh! Wait! Come back. There was somebody named Ismo3089. He sent $50 saying, "You make great content. Fun to see you at Lombard Live. Have an awesome week and congratulations on 100K. Been here a long time." Well, gosh, that's phenomenal. That's really neat. Thank you so much. That's really cool. Oh, my friend Connor sent $10. Don't forget to grab some burned fish for dinner. Okay, this is not gonna be as organized as my videos, I'm afraid. Connor talked me into meeting him and some friends at BabsCon, the Bay Area Brony convention. I'm not in the target demo for that. It was really neat for people who like My Little Pony, and they come out to this huge convention, a hotel just down the freeway here. And I was a bad influence and talked to him and his friend who should have been attending the convention that they'd spent a lot of money and gone to a lot of trouble to go to. And I came to the Bay Area and said, hey, let's go on the civil engineering ghoul tour. So I took him to, he and his buddy, it's a suburb just south of here, that in 2009, San Bruno, the gas company did something wrong with the pipes. I forget exactly what happened. It caused a major leak on a major line, and it exploded and blew up a neighborhood. It sounds like the sort of thing that would have happened in, I don't know, 1906 when the great earthquake happened, but it was 2009, I think. It just, and I thought that, okay, well, these type of disasters never happen. Boston had an issue where the gas company, so when you run natural gas to houses, normally you run it at a higher pressure, and then you get to the house, and then you lower it right at the meter, and it goes from like, I don't know, I can't remember if it's like 10 pounds down to like less than a pound. And then that's what goes in to feed your, stove. So when you turn on your stove, it just kind of comes on very gently. It doesn't, blast like a torch. So this town outside of Boston was so old that they would just run like 2-3 pounds in the system. Somebody connected the high pressure system of the modern houses to the old one. So people are sitting in their kitchens in this Boston suburb, and all of a sudden the stove starts whistling like a kettle, and they turn around, and so the fire department, including the fire chief himself, they get so many calls in a matter of like 2 minutes of houses on fire. They thought it was a terrorist attack. So civil engineering is just fascinating because it has to go right. It's everywhere. If we mess up civil engineering, people die very quickly, and yet it's really easy for civil engineering to go wrong. So I take Connor and his buddy, we go see the ghoul tour of that. We see where the different freeways collapsed in the 1989 earthquake, both in Oakland and here in the city, where the Bay Bridge used to be, where it had a section that collapsed. So I don't know, I think a Bay Area Brony convention sounds a little more wholesome, but that's what I was geeking out to. All right, we're getting behind here. Used to live in Santa Clarita, succeeded in getting rid of red light cameras there. Yeah, and that's what was interesting to me about covering the red light camera story was I'm not an opponent of red light cameras, but it sounds like they are kind of fundamentally flawed in the sense that the problem is the person running the red light, not necessarily catching them. I mean, yeah, sure, you should catch them, but the issue is that pedestrian, the teenager who crossed at Bouquet Canyon that I mentioned in the video, he still got hit by a car, even though there were cameras there. It didn't do anything to prevent the fatality. The goal is to work backwards from what we're trying to solve, reducing pedestrian fatalities and car collisions, and see what works, rather than just kind of coming at it the other way and saying, well, maybe if we throw cameras at it, that'll solve the problem. Well, maybe, but it could also distract us from doing a more important solution to the problem. Okay, I gotta get caught up here. Let's see. Oh, Creamy Sriracha writes, and I apologize, I don't know what that donation is. It's a big number. It's a Y with 2 lines in it, and Creamy Sriracha writes, love your videos, so thoughtful and exciting. Eric, redacted, writes, too bad I'm broke, I would donate. I understand, Eric. I understand too much. Most of my career I've worked in public radio and journalism, so I absolutely understand. And to show a little bit of bad karma on my point, I only subscribe to one Patreon. There are these 2 guys who actually live here in the Bay Area. They do a Simpsons podcast called Talking Simpsons. And I give them $5 a month because I'm going, that's pretty cool. And they geek out about every single episode of The Simpsons ever. So super chats are going to blow his mind. Yeah, but what is a super chat? Is it like the font gets bigger and it comes out and punches me like, hey, here's my comment. Okay, next one. We're not going to get around to this stuff. YouTube takes their 35%, probably. The ad revenue on YouTube, I think, splits out pretty close to 50-50. I don't remember. It's 55-45. I don't remember in whose favor. What I do find interesting is that last year I made slightly more money, but with much fewer views. And this year, the number of views went up fantastically this year, but the revenue was down probably almost 50%. I don't know if that's the advertising market softened or if it was a matter of, I know one thing it could be is they have those mid-roll ads, and they really push really hard on a longer video to say, hey, run a mid-roll ad, and I think they're kind of annoying, so I turned them all off. And so it could be, when you have supply and demand and you have all these, ads spots that you can run commercials in, and there used to just be the ones at the beginning of videos, and now there's twice as many because they're the ones in the middle of videos. Well, the price of a spot goes down, and because I'm only running the ones at the beginning, that can make a difference. Patreon makes me more money than YouTube by a lot. YouTube revenue doesn't pay that well, so. But that's okay. I'm not really doing this to be middle class. I just can't help myself. Next comment. We're going to eternally distract you. Yeah, probably. I thought at one point of becoming a teacher, and I didn't, and this is why. You know those teachers, even substitute teachers, that you get them going on a thing, and it's really important. And we'll just talk about it for like 1 second, and then we'll get to class. Yeah. Ismo is a copy of the owner of Jailbreak on Roblox. I'm not sure. I know the word Roblox. You guys are amazing. Oh, my friend, the 70s Disco King, gave $5 saying congrats on 100,000. Well, thank you. Big Mario says LOL. VH says, yeah, people can donate in the chat if they want at Road Guy Rob. Okay, well, this is neat. This is really cool. Jack Feldman says, you guys are so generous. 9Click says, we're here for some unfiltered Rob. Miguel for $4.99 says, your videos are top notch, Rob. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. JFO Backup at Alex Great. I think he is legit Ismo. He has the verified thing. Boy, I remember back to the year that was like 2 years ago. It's called 2006. And all the adults were saying, boy, these kids in college are so bright and so smart, and they understand this Facebook thing. And I said, oh yeah, I was working for a radio station, and it's these old classical announcers, and they didn't know what social media was, and I had figured it out because I'd been on Facebook for a year, you know. And so I got to hold a seminar for all these old timers, you know, in their 50s, to explain to them what social media was. And then one day, the pandemic hits. I'm still thinking I'm young, but I'm, you know, now in my mid 30s. And somebody's like, "Oh, hit me up on Discord." And I'm like, you put a bunch of words together, but I don't know what they mean. And then for the first year with my friends on Discord, they'd say like, "Oh, jump in, I'm streaming live, you can watch it." And I'd be like, "So how do I do that?" And I realized I was the old guy at work that I'd have to go help with Microsoft Outlook because they didn't know how. So I do an attachment, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh. Headlight 41 donating $10, thank you, says, "Come check out Pigtail Bridges in Keystone, South Dakota by Mount Rushmore." What's special about Pigtail Bridges? Because I've never heard of them. I'll have to get in and Google them and see what that is, because I've never been to Mount Rushmore, never been to South Dakota, actually. I would like to, so here's where I'm at. I would like to put together a trip where there's a whole bunch of little things I want to see, like Carmel, Indiana, right? Where ahead of time, I can interview all the people on Zoom and kind of put the story together. And then just kind of like go and have all my stand-up. Stand-up is where I appear on camera. Have everything ready to go, kind of line it up. Oh shoot, I'm blocking this person's driveway. Sorry about that. I veered off the sidewalk a little bit because I didn't want to block the sidewalk, but now I'm blocking this person's driveway. Hello. Okay, they were friendly. Okay, then my chat went away. Come back, chat. And so that would be the sort of thing that if I could kind of put together the right research, I rather than me just showing up and telling you my opinion, like, "Hey, I read Wikipedia and here's what I think about, you know, Pigtail Bridges, South Dakota." It's nice to find something on Google Scholar or somebody in the industry where there's something I can talk to, because I don't know that much. I'm just some dumb former radio guy. What I like to do with a degree, what I like to do is go talk to somebody who knows something and then pull that in. And so a lot of it is if there's something unique, you know, maybe South Dakota DOT or something that's doing with that. And now that I'm 100,000, do you know how much easier it is? When I first reached out to Caltrans, the very first interview I did on this channel was a guy who does bridges. He's one of the top bridge designers for the state of California. And so I did the follow-up story on, well, what happens to these bridges that are, you know, in an earthquake, and the cables that they can put on to kind of tie everything together. And he was great. I mean, camera was messed up and he looked like a ghost, but if you go back and look at that old video, always put your camera on automatic everything and just leave it. I'm not a photographer where I get in with the focus and all that stuff. Blocking the driveway again, hold on. Let me flip it around so you can see what's going on here. So I have my poor tripod that I'm balancing the phone where it doesn't belong, and I'm blocking this poor person who has a private driveway. And so I don't want to be rude and block it. Maybe I'll come over here for a minute, see if I can set this back up. You know, it's the kind of place where a black Lexus drives in and a white Lexus drives out. Must have a couple of bucks there, you know. I mean, certainly not YouTube or live stream money, but you know, I think they're doing all right for themselves. Okay, come on, balance. You good? It's not falling down. Pull the chat back up. Anyway, point is, it would be fun to do that, and if I ever do that big circuit of doing several stories at once, I assume the chat gets saved on here so I can go back and write that down. I have a Google Maps where every time you reach out with a good idea, it's not that I don't listen, I just get really busy and easily distracted. And so I made a My Maps on Google, and then I'll go and I'll find the thing and I'll put a pin in it. And then as I start to get, you know, information of who I could contact or whatever, I put it in there. The problem I haven't done the trip yet is because I've got footage from Connecticut, footage from two videos from Oregon, and I think something else that I still need to edit. because they're in the queue, but things keep popping in front of the queue, like the obviously the story about the road in Hollister with the zigzaggy lines popped up, and then that turned into 2, and 100,000 live streaming. Oh my goodness! And then of course the one I'm working on one right now about California's jaywalking law changing, because it's not legal to jaywalk in California, but you won't get a ticket for it anymore. And there's a certain 8-foot-tall celebrity who might appear in that video. All right, let's move on here. Let's see. We've got dances for $5, but for $50 gets no reaction. Okay, I got to do a better reaction than that. I am not a dancer. Let's keep the donations going. Well, that's cool. Bay Area Brony, I still can't believe that show has an existence. I think that I'd heard they got into some financial trouble, but somebody bailed it out. I do know for a friend, some of my friends who are into that sort of thing, it's a very important place for them to gather and get together, you know. And all I could say is if we can still have a gigantic Star Trek convention in Las Vegas every year for people celebrating a show that's, what, turned 100? No, at least 50. There's room for My Little Pony, sure, why not? Walter White gives $10. That's really nice. I hope that isn't the money that he had buried out in the desert. In the chat, he says there's an option to do something called a super chat. Okay, well, thank you, Walter White. Art Stone writes, 100,000 subscribers is the chat hole to be able to allow super chats. Okay, so $5 from Matthew Normand. No need to dance, just keep doing your thing. So I like doing anti-dance. Okay, let's just see if Alex, let's see, says something. I'm not sure what that is. You guys are crazy with your generosity. Indeed. Oh my gosh. I'm astonished. B Buster says, hello from Arizona. I love the video you make about hawk signals in Tucson. The roads here are so bad. And part of the challenge, Tucson's got a unique problem that I've never seen any other city in the West have to deal with. There's like no freeways. You have the one freeway that skirts kind of the edge of, you know, the west end of town. But like I talked about in the Phoenix Without Freeways video, Arizona for some reason just wasn't really aggressive. They were happy to embrace suburban land use and getting in and doing single family houses and sprawling it out into the desert, which is a choice they made. You know, I'm not going to say that's good or bad, but it's a choice. If you do that choice, you have to build a transportation system that supports it, and Arizona didn't do that part. So Tucson is full of probably some of the most surprisingly thought out arterial roads you're going to find, because those arterial roads don't just move people from the store to their house and their house to their job. They have to move people regionally from one end of Tucson to the other. And so those streets feel, for a community of what, 600,000 or whatever, those streets feel so busy because they have to do so much work. And now that everything's built out, the freeways are never going to get built. It's just Tucson has to live with it. Okay, let's see. Sounds like some Soviet Union stuff. I don't remember what that was, but LMAO, the Roblox dev with the huge donation. Somebody call Erin Brockovich. I think she retired. Yo, I smo bossa, and yo. Okay, we've got $10. Is that Australian? Oh yeah, it is. So Conrad Hendrick says congrats on 100,000 subs from Melbourne, Australia. Well, thank you. Yeah, someday that's the dream, right? Is to put together not just a little trip of going around the United States, but to actually venture off of North America. I've never left the United States. I have a passport. I've been meaning to leave the United States, but when I had the opportunity to say, you know, graduate college, saved up some money for my first job, and it's like, do you want to go spend that money on, you know, seeing Europe or buying a car? I bought a car. I still have the car. Put 300,000 miles on the car. I think it was the right call. But as a result, I've gotten to see the Western, especially the Western United States and the Midwest some, really well. But I haven't had a chance to I haven't even been down to Mexico yet. Cowboy Butler with $20 says, keep up the great videos. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Should I don't know what you're supposed to do. I saw on Friend's live stream that he'd do some type of a dance, but I'm not a dancer. Jersey Tom says they blew up a neighborhood in the 90s near Somerset, Edison, New Jersey. I got to go back and write that down because that's fascinating. Is that a gas explosion as well? Jack Feldman says, Rob, you're getting a lot of tacos tonight. Yeah, even Del Taco. So I still love Del Taco because I could feed myself in grad school. If you went to Del Taco, you'd get a receipt, and if you call in the survey, you could put in a number, and then that receipt was worth $1 toward your next purchase. And if I did it right, I could feed myself with the receipt, so subtracting $1, for I think $6.47. And that's what I survived on for 5 years. I was working in radio, I was going to grad school, getting an engineering degree. And now I think the same deal, I was at somewhere around $12, so it's just more money. But that's okay, I can get a lot of tacos. Swamp Monster 440 says he's about to become richer than Bill Gates. I'm on my way. Alex Great says Ismo. Isn't Ismo that Honda robot that fell down the stairs or something? Rob should do more live streams. Clearly, maybe I need to do that more often, since it's the prep time to do a live stream. Well, apparently is nothing if I just answer chat. But prepping this took about a day and a half versus a video, which is, the prep time just to even be ready to start putting it together can be sometimes at least a week, working at it full time. Look at all the donos. I guess that's donations. David McDonald, Australian, $5, says, I wouldn't say that curved streets aren't great to walk. They are, but having great footpaths that go with great roads is important. You bring up a really good point, David. I'm thinking about suburbs. I assume Australian suburbs may be similar to this, but American suburbs where on purpose we stepped away from grids, because grids, when every street is kind of the same and they all kind of go the same place, and you have the main street, well, it's busy and everybody's backed up and there's a lot of red lights. So you think, oh, well, I'll just dart over one block and speed through. That's the western part of western LA. You get west of downtown LA and you have all these grid streets that used to be suburbs where the streetcar would run through there and people could hop off the streetcar and walk to their house. And the streetcar is long gone. It got torn out, 60, 70 years ago. But the grid's still there. And so I'm using Waze, and Waze says, oh, don't go down, Olympic Boulevard or whatever. Jump over a block, cut through the neighborhood. So to get away from that, 50, 60 years ago, they said, oh, well, people are just going to cut through neighborhoods in their cars. What we'll do instead is we'll wind the streets, have a lot of kind of dead ends and meandering and that sort of thing, so that cars won't cut through. It works really well. Modern suburbs, you just don't really want to cut through them. They're usually not worth your time. But they're terrible for pedestrians. So you could have your house here, and then a block away, the school here. But if it's like a dead end here and you have to go out this way and around to the big street and around to the big street this way and then to a side street and then back over to a little street like this, what could have been a little like 5-minute walk for a kid to walk to school is now, an hour and a half going walking, And so what you can do instead is say, well, we still make this windy road like we always have, but we could put a pedestrian walkway. So you have like two cul-de-sacs, two circles that kind of dead end to each other. Rather than not letting them connect, put a little path between them. So you kind of have a grid for pedestrians, but a windy network for cars. Okay, let's see, where were we? David says, I wouldn't say, David's $5. I wouldn't say curved streets aren't great to walk on. They have great footpaths that go great with roads. Yeah, exactly, good point. B-Buster says, whoa, it's Walter from Breaking Bad. Which, spoiler, canonically, I'll just say I'm surprised Walter's available to post in the live stream, just in case somebody hasn't seen Breaking Bad. Okay, more Ismo stuff. 9Click says terrifying. Alex the Great says friend me on Ismo. TH says civil engineering isn't on the moon yet. That's true. I don't think we've built anything on the moon yet. Mechanical engineering's on the moon. Vexology's on the moon. Alec Denston says, hey Rob, I'm in northern Utah. Where should I go to get a civil engineering degree? Both the U and BYU have great programs. Weber isn't bad. There's a lot of really good programs. That's a friend of mine. I went to BYU. It's a good school if you fit in their box. If you don't fit in their box, don't go there. That's another discussion for another time. But the University of Utah, I've heard good things about that. If you have any interest of like venturing off and doing rocket ships, go up to Utah State. Utah State has an excellent like aerospace type program. So, but I check out the U of U. In retrospect, if I were to do it all over again, I would have done Salt Lake Community College first for a couple of years, and then I would have gone to a university from there, because I kind of spent 2 years at a university spinning my wheels, not knowing what to do. So Alejandro Tapia says, congrats on 100K. I love all your videos. Recently got a PE license. Keep up the great work. That is impressive, because I just remember studying for the EIT, and that was a big to-do as it was. Trying to get a PE license is, I have a buddy from high school who I think he took the PE 3 times, did the Kaplan courses, and went to, it just was a lot of work. So I understand the California PE is one that I think has a whole day just on seismic engineering. So, okay, what we got here? Message retracted. Okay. Jesse X says, hello from the Netherlands. Hello. Todd Wilkinson says, we still have them in Ventura. Unfortunately, I don't remember what we were talking about. No Diggity 24/7 says, with the $20 donation, says, congrats and thanks for the knowledgeable and fun videos over the years. Stop by the Baked Bear while you were there. Oh, I wish I knew where. The Baked Bear here in town. I'll look it up. That'll be fun. John 1032 says, big ups from Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. I love your style. Well, thank you very much. Hotel Dawn says, my cat is watching you on the TV. He really likes the cars in the background. Yeah, if I don't keep blocking the street, you can actually see him coming down the hill here. Oh, no. Hold on. All right, we'll get this. I really wish I had. I wish I hadn't broken that thing. We're gonna get to the field trip here. I just got to get caught up, even though I think I'm getting behind. What's going on? Not much. Just hanging out on a sidewalk. Why do you wear an orange vest? I wear a yellow one with reflective texture on it, and orange accents. Honest reason. This kind doesn't reflect on camera. This is they have series 1, 2, and 3, as you know. And really, to be standing on the side of highways and things, I should be wearing a level 3. In fact, I need to buy one for when I'm not on camera and out filming. I don't ever walk out on a highway, but even just sometimes standing on the side of a busy street on the sidewalk, it might be good. But if I wear the levels 2 and 3, they've got reflector strips on them, and then those. Especially if I have to use lights or the sun glares on it, it just looks funny on camera. So I wear a level 1. And the story of the reason I wear one is because years ago, my grandma gave me this shirt. I had this vest from something I did in grad school where I was out inventorying a bunch of deficient like bridge guardrails in some small town. And I wanted to make that first video I ever made. I just quit my radio job. And I went to, I'm getting some coaching here from a friend of mine who says, just skim through the comments. All right, we get to that. Let me finish my story. And I wanted to be left alone filming that video. So I went up on a parking garage where I could have a good shot. I was afraid a security guard would come hassle me. So to buy me some time, I put on this orange vest. And it's the best costume decision I ever made because, one, it does fit road engineering, even though it's technically not compliant with what a highway engineer would actually wear. But 2, it lets me be left alone. So when I'm out filming, people go, oh, this guy looks like he knows what he's doing because he's wearing an orange vest. It's great. Okay, let's skim through here. Sorry, I'm going to skim through comments so I can get caught back up. My kid pointed to me, to your channel. Great content, keep it up. Thank you. That explains your voice, your work on the radio. Yeah, well, a rich game developer is watching your video. Well, that's cool. Red light cameras create more accidents. Sorry, Congrats on 100,000. Liz says it's hard to do monthly, so super chat when I can. Well, I appreciate everything. I don't do tiers on Patreon for that reason, because everybody's at where they're at, you know. So if you're ever just able to donate $1 or contribute $1 a year, that means the world to me, because that's $1 you can put towards trying to go out and make another video. And so some people have the means, and they can, you know. I had a great guy in Portland. He just stopped by while I was in the middle of filming. I think he gave me something like 40, 50 bucks on the spot. I think it was in cash, you know. But then he had the means to do that, you know. I don't have the means to do that typically, but I do today. But I understand. So that's why I don't do tiers, is because if you just kick $1 once a year, that means a lot to me. Let's see. Siemens Traffic Signals and Road Signals says hello. If that's the official company channel, shoot me an email sometime. Maybe there's something we can do. I went to school in Provo a decade or so ago. Don't judge me, I won't. It's been a lot of fun to see you go over the new interchanges in Utah County. Yeah, no, I was the Diverging Diamonds. The first time I saw them in Utah County. Hey, JSBN123 donates $20 and has something very important to say. He or she says, hey, here's my comment. So, well, cool, thank you. Rob, super chats are people giving you money, and it looks like you already have $200. That's amazing. This is really fun. Keratin says, uh-oh. Isaac says, he's reading old comments, somebody tell him. San Francisco, Squiggly Road. Alex says, I love coverage of new funky interchanges in Utah. V says, this type of advertising running on videos might affect it. Boy, I got it. Sorry, guys. I just got to skip way ahead. My mom gives $20. Says my channel is the best. That's nice of her. Morad Prime says $5. I hope you find enough content for that positive offset left turn lane idea I sent you. Yeah, no, it'd be fun to do that. It was playing with like a continuous flow interchange. I'll talk about more. My brother calling me out. When did you ever want to be a teacher? Okay, we're way behind. Sorry, guys. I got to zoom way ahead here. We're all the way back to me talking as a teacher. Friend of mine gives $5 and said, this should cover one small taco. Yeah, well, San Francisco prices. And Stefan Aleo says, would like to see your footage from Connecticut. I'll give you a hint. It's the Merritt Parkway. $9.99 from him. Thank you. Sorry, I have to skip so many comments. I didn't realize I was this far behind. I thought I was like 4 comments behind, not 40. Anzatal at $19.99, thank you, says my girlfriend, or my gluten-free, probably my girlfriend, was complaining because she kept getting red light camera tickets. So I sent her your video and told her maybe she should be more careful. I was restricted to the side of the bed that night. Sorry. Thanks for all you can do. Well, thank you for your money. I appreciate it. And yeah, well, oh well. I went into the red light camera video not knowing whether I was for it or against it, so I just kind of let the data lead where it went. And it's interesting. There really are some. It's well intended, but there's definitely some problems. Okay, Matthew Bittorf, $19.99, says, Rob, love your content. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and your video on bus rapid transit, those buses that act like light rail trains, was timely and explained a lot as Madison tries to install BRT. Madison also just installed a flex lane on their belt line. Flex lane seems to be working. I'll have to check that out. These are the sorts of things I need to go and pin on my map. Ryan at $20 says, really enjoy your content. Would like to see a piece about railroad crossing safety. Thank you. That would be good. I actually hadn't put that on my radar. The closest I'd gotten was that orange line in Los Angeles, which is a bus rapid transit line. It's light rail, but it runs on rubber tires and has a diesel engine. And it runs where there used to be railroad tracks. So they used to have arms that would come down. They tore those out because it's a bus. You don't have railroad crossing arms for that. And now, some people are wondering if that ought to come back, but it would be a little weird to have red lights, ding, 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 and arms come down. But instead of saying railroad crossing, it would say bus crossing. Okay, Camera's falling off here. Sorry, I feel bad. I'm going to scroll past all these great comments here. Isaac H at $10 says, how about the Alaskan highway system? This is an extremely hostile environment to keep everything moving, where many vehicles and semi-trucks or tourist RVs, also constant earthquakes and permafrost. And I wonder the maintenance on that too, because you think about, you have to go below the frost line because you don't want the ground under the road to freeze. So you got to go deep enough that it doesn't start heaving and stuff. But I'm sure the frost line on those roads are feet underground. So what do you do? My brother gives me $20. He said, didn't you destroy my car while you were spinning your wheels? Nonetheless, proud of you. Which of your cars did I destroy that time? I'm sure I probably did destroy one of your cars, but I don't remember. Sorry. Let's see. Jake says $2. Thank you. Says monthly live stream, por favor, and congrats on 100. Well, thank you very much, Jake. Let's see. We're going to get caught up, and then I can get back to talking about Lombard Street. I put together, I said, boy, I hope I have enough material to fill an hour or two. I haven't gotten to any of it. I guess I can make an actual video, and in several months you'll see it. Santa Claus, oh, he is real. It says at $19.99. Like your videos, great information. Well, it says live your videos, but I think it's like or love. Like and love. Like and love. Great information and entertainment. Please come visit us at the North Pole. Our traffic is getting crazy. Well, I do know until California addresses its affordability issues, people are going to move to other states. Here's a little secret. People don't leave California because of taxes. They leave because of housing prices. And so then they go make, they domino that there's a shortage of housing in California. They end up in Seattle and Phoenix and Denver and eventually all over the country. They're talking to a friend from Tampa, Florida, people coming out from California. And they end up in the North Pole eventually.
Hello, guy.
Hi. That's my friend's daughter. SCY at $5 said, I'd love to see a video on how infrastructure is adapted to electric vehicles. Keep it up. Even at 100K, you're underrated. I think I'm slightly overrated, but that's all right. I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see too, because I think the nature of anybody going to stream snipe him. I need a duck. Spencer says wrong. I left because of both and terrible politics. Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm saying that mostly it's the people I've known, younger people. It's they're like, okay, I got this great middle-class job. I'm ready to go. How much for a condo? 7 what? Never mind. And then they end up, in some other state. So, okay. I think I'm caught up with the comments. Let's come over here and talk a little bit about Lombard Street. So, this whole left side of the street, not as many tourists as there were here a few minutes ago. So, let's go, let's walk up it. Let's check it out. So, first of all, to give you some idea, if you really get the magnitude, if you haven't ever been to San Francisco, there's a little bit of a hill here. In that, it just, I mean that's like straight down, and the city goes up over the next hill and then back down. It really is kind of wild that, so I'm trying to get to the other lens that's a little bit better, but that we just took basically small mountains and just laid a grid on top of it. But they did. It all started after 1849, where the 49ers and everybody was coming out west, and then a lot of people just stayed. It was Yerba Buena. And this street existed as a street, but you wouldn't have carriages going up and down it because there's just no way to make a carriage work, And so it was definitely a street that people just walked up and down. I was looking up a little bit about the history of transit in California too, and they had the first mass transit system in San Francisco was in 1849. They had rail cars and they pull them with horses on the flatter streets. And that was the, kind of precursor to the cable cars that would show up a few decades later. So anyway, it's just interesting. We do a whole city block and then walking up a sidewalk here. Let's see if I can scooch past these people here when they get a chance. Pardon me. Sorry.
Okay, don't worry about it.
Now the fun part is people actually live on the street. Imagine pulling out of your garage right onto a tourist trap. And I had one of the times I came down Lombard Street, the guy stopped, he put on his hazards. I was wondering what was going on. Then he inched forward and backed into his garage. So, but it does make this street accessible. So we got some donations here. I better not miss it. Joe P. Cool says, congrats on 100K. The content is top tier. Happy to be a supporter, and also hello from the AA Roads Forum community. I love that forum. It's a message board called AA Roads, and it's road geeks all hanging out top. Super important question to ask you, is Illinois flat? And the answer is not as flat as I thought. There actually were little tiny hills. Grudius Maximus at $20, thank you, says, hey, Rob, congrats on 100K. Been following since 2019, and your content has helped me choose a career as a transportation engineer. Currently working on a huge bridge job. Well, that's awesome. Be curious to know which bridge it is, but that's great. That's what's so neat about transportation engineering is it's everywhere. Everybody who drives a car or even just walks down the street has a little bit of transportation engineering knowledge. Good practice is just good practice. I'm going to keep walking here. Okay. Somebody was commenting that somebody was wearing a winter parka. Well, it's breezy. There's a type of weather that exists in California called breezy. It's when it's not cold, it's not necessarily windy, but it's just not like perfectly comfortable. And so sometimes when it's breezy, you've got to bundle up and put on your parka. See cars turning the corner here. See if I can catch up with them. This guy's taking a photo while driving down the hill. So yeah, imagine every day this is your driveway, having to pull out onto the street. But this all happened because of land value. The most California of reasons to say, well, we want to make the lots worth more money, and getting their Model T. Even on this street, I think it went from I got my notes here, but I think it's a 16% grade, so it's still not a gigantic change. But at 16 in a car is a heck of a lot better than 27 of attacking this straight on. We'll walk over to the next block when we get to the top here, because what originally was going to happen was the drugstore guy who owned this, he toyed with the idea of putting the street in, but he died. And before he died, he was thinking, instead of saying, well, maybe we don't make the street go all the way through, we have a street for cars go part way down the block, and then just sort of have it be like a really steep park at the end. And that's what actually happened on the next block over. But he ended up passing away. He was in debt, so his widow sat down with the city and said, well, maybe we can do something, because she really needed to sell those lots to get out of debt now that her husband had died. So the city made a deal. They said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll build the street, make it public, so that anybody who comes could come and slowly wind their car and drive down the street and have access to their houses along the lots. But you guys have to pay for the landscaping. And according to that article of the woman on SF City Guides who wrote that article, that alone was kind of a deal that got people kind of confused, because they were saying, well, we don't want to pay for the landscaping, even though the city's paying to maintain the road. And so it created some interesting tension. At one point, somebody brought a bulldozer in and ripped all the landscaping out. It's stuff that I was trying to track down to verify in the newspaper archives and couldn't find it. But, you know, like I say, this is coming secondhand off of somebody who had done research years ago, and now archive.org is the only thing saving it. Hydrangea bushes, I think, are what ended up on this block, but I'm not a plant person to know what I'm looking for, if those are hydrangea bushes or not. Objectively, this is not a very long city block. Sorry, I keep tripping on my microphone cable here. And so it feels like I've been walking forever, but it's just Pythagorean's theorem, I guess. I may be walking one block one way, but I'm walking, a mile straight up, right? Here's the entry at the top. And if you haven't experienced San Francisco in person, it blows my mind. I came the first time in 2009, I think, driving a stick shift because I wasn't thinking. And I wanted to go down Lombard Street. And so I followed the map, and you end up at this stop sign here at the top. I'll go ahead and cross over so we can see. See if they stop for me in the crosswalk. Thank you. See, ISMO says, Rob does leg day. Do you? I'm a believer in exercise that gets stuff done. So I don't have a gym membership. I just try to run more errands. But you come up really steep. This one's not as bad, but I think it's the next block down. You're coming at it totally straight. And you go, well, it says on the map that that's Lombard Street, but you wouldn't know it from here, other than the tourists. And then you just kind of attack it and you go. The next thing you know, you're going down the street. So watch this gentleman, I think. Oh, that looks like some sort of self-driving car project or something. They got a bunch of sensors on that thing. Should we watch it crash its way down the hill? Oh, am I getting somebody's photo? I'm not going to go too far back down the hill because then I got to walk back up. There's our little self-driving experiment here. Oh, shoot, there goes my clipboard. Well, video first. Where is he? How's this little self-driving project doing? Didn't run over the pedestrians. That's good. It's 8 turns. 8 little switchbacks all the way to the bottom. So I gotta pick up my clipboard here just a second. Okay. All right. Let's go over and walk to the next block. Let's see what's Rob bought a $2.5 million house in San Francisco. Well, I don't know how sustainable, even if hypothetically Jeff Bezos or somebody was watching this chat and is like, I like Lombard Street, super chat 2.5 million. I don't think I could afford the power bill on that house. Oh, it's just fascinating because this is a type of city. I suppose if you're more the world traveler type, you've been to London and Paris and Venice and all these places. You come to San Francisco, you just say, it's another world city. But for somebody like me, who's really only traveled by car domestically, and for me, a foreign trip is like going to Denver. Coming to San Francisco the first time, it's like, really? This place really does exist. It's just, it sounds like a story. Yeah, there's this city, and it has huge hills, and one street that has 6 turns. So this gives you a little bit of idea of what Lombard Street might have been like had Carl Henry done it his way, which is basically you have a fairly steep street going down, and then it just sort of levels out, and then you'd have a steep park. Jack says, hey Rob, I'm starting my degree and I want to go into transportation traffic engineering. I'm curious, how much input does an engineer actually get in the project? That's the funny thing about building roads. I went into it with the same question. I said, who ultimately makes the call of what a road is supposed to be? Is it the property owner, the developer, the transportation consultant, the engineer who actually does like the hard design, the city, the county, the state, the federal government, third-party interests? And the answer is all of them. It kind of becomes this thing that sort of just grows organically. And eventually, probably the way you can have the most control is if you're building a new subdivision or shopping center and the developer has a lot of control over the project and just needs to get the city's approval. But for the most part, big projects, ones that involve the public, and that's the other thing I didn't even mention, is you have the public get involved too, because it's our taxpayer dollars at work. We get a say in it. And so, oh wow, this gives you some idea of what he had. Is it would have, instead of doing all this twisting back and forth, it would have just leveled out. He was thinking more of a park. And then you'd have where basically the park would kind of be on a hill here. I keep tripping on my cord. I got this long cord for my microphone so you can hear me and not the, but see, it's really pretty. And so it's hard to know, if Lombard Street had never been built, we would have ended up with something like this. And it might have been better, but then we wouldn't have the neat, cool thing that we do. And here's a little fun thing I discovered in my research. I thought Lombard Street was one of a kind, that nowhere else, and certainly in America, and certainly in San Francisco, was there any sort of twisty street like that. And it turns out there's a second one, but nobody goes to that one. It's not pretty. It's not in the heart of the touristy part of San Francisco. It almost got wiped out by the 101 freeway. It's a street called Vermont. I've actually got the address, and when I get where I won't trip here to the bottom of the hill, I will pull the address up if you want to look it up on Google Maps. If you're on desktop. If you're on mobile, then that means, leaving the live stream, and I'm certainly not going to recommend you do that. Okay. Get down here to the street again. Okay, I'm going to put it back so you can see my face again. And I'm going to set up this janky tripod here. Okay, almost. Let's see. Okay, is it holding itself? Neat. Okay. See if I can tip it just a little bit so you can see something more interesting than the sky. But okay, so according to my notes, I'm going to look this up. 901 Vermont Street. 901 Vermont, like the state, street. It's 4 miles south of here. So if I was more daring, I'd rent one of those little scooters, mount you on the handlebars, and we'd zoom down there and check it out. But I don't even think I'm going to have time to get over there before it's dark, because 4 miles out in the suburbs is nothing. 4 miles in the city is, that could take an hour, So, plus I don't see any of those scooters, because you could almost talk me into it, but I don't think that's going to end well. Me holding a broken tripod and you like this while I'm riding a scooter through red lights. But the idea of terracing streets like this goes back to 1905, before there were even cars. So again, credit to Susan Saperstein at SF City Guides. She says, check out in her citations the San Francisco Record newspaper from like December of 1905 or whatever. And you end up with this article here that says, Engineer Parsons advocates tunneling and terracing the slopes at Nob Hill. So it turns out this guy Parsons here, he's the Parsons, if you're in the engineering world, of Parsons Brinkerhoff. It's now a company called WSP, this gigantic conglomerate that just does tons of civil engineering work. There's probably good odds somebody now, you may work for WSP. And the guy who started it all was William Barclay Parsons, the Parson in Parsons. So Parsons, he'd been all over. He'd been to London where they had some sort of convention on traffic. Again, this is before the car. This was like 1905. And San Francisco's business group came in and said, I work with some of them. Oh, that's cool. So there's, WSP people. And so the Association of, so much easier when I deal with stuff digitally rather than on paper. You'd think I'd put these in order, right? You ever had that teacher in school who was the type who's like, hold on, I've got my overhead, my overhead slide here. Anyway, it was the convention on for the business owners. It's basically the Chamber of Commerce. And they came in, and normally very hush-hush about like, oh, this is what we're going to talk about in terms of how we want to reshape San Francisco to be more, better. And so he came up with eight suggestions of what to do to the city. One of them was saying, well, there's different methods of, he called them methods of traction. You had still horse carts dragging little train car things down the street. You had, I think the cable cars had just started about 20 years before that. And so trying to figure out what was going to be the thing. And the city was playing with different ideas. One of them was there was this new technology out of New York called subway. And I said, hey, we're a dense town like New York. We should put in a subway. And see if this sounds familiar to you. Anytime you hear about like trying to build a subway system now, he said, Mr. Parsons did not favor the construction of a subway on Market Street. He figured the cost of such a subway at $2 million a mile with stations and equipment. Said that there was not enough sufficient travel today on any one particular route in the city to pay for the operating expense and interest on such an investment. And it might be true, but it's just so funny that in 1905, when we think like, oh, it was before the car and people were more enlightened and they were building transit and big investments and stuff. But it was the same, we're human. No matter when we build things, we're human. And it's the same human argument of like, oh, well, we can't build the subway because not enough people would ride it. So they never built it. San Francisco doesn't have a subway. Well, it's got the Trans-Bay terminal thing over there for BART, but that got built in the 80s. But it's not like New York. We have all kinds of lines. San Francisco's at grade. And Parsons said the same thing. He's saying, for instance, this is Russian Hill and Nob Hill. People, when they're only traveling like 3 or 4 miles, they don't want to go underground. We should put everything above ground. And so they did. So he was saying that, yeah, we should change it to an overhead trolley. You see those all over. If I can find one nearby, but I haven't seen one. Okay, down the street there's, it's a city bus, but it grabs the wire above. I guess that's common. You go to Europe and other places, you have a bus on rubber tires and it's a bus. But instead of using diesel or natural gas to propel itself, it grabs an electric wire. Blew my mind the first time I'd ever seen that.
Okay, Rob, right?
Hi, come on in.
Man. I know you're filming.
Hey, you got your U of U shirt on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, get out of here. No,
here, enjoy the city, man.
Oh, dude. Hey, what's your name?
Nick.
Hey, stick around for a second. Do you live here?
I do. I live in San Francisco.
That's cool. So I was just talking about those buses with the overhead wires.
Yeah, absolutely. The trolley buses, right?
Yeah. So are you from here, or did you come from Utah, or?
No, I'm originally from like Modesto, California.
Modesto?
So around there in the Central Valley.
So what made you a Ute? My sworn enemy.
Absolutely. I just wanted to apply there to try something new out, and I think you went to and you were
BYU.
BYU, yeah. I was like, all right, Salt Lake City's kind of cool. Got some cool road design. It's just different than here, you know. This place is cool, but like,
Oh, I know.
it's so different.
Like this is great. We just did the hike going up the Lombard Hill,
Yeah.
and I was saying, there's a second street like Lombard in the city.
I was kind of watching you on
You
here. I was
watching?
coming down. I'm like, yeah. That was is this one you're talking about, or?
No, so the original Lombard was going to be like this. The guy who owned it back in the teens wanted to have where Model Ts could like pull up to the lot. It would make the lot worth more money. But the thought of like actually getting Model Ts up and down the street, I don't think he was seriously considering terracing it like they did. He was talking about doing something more like this, where it kind of come down a little bit of a hill and stop, and then you'd have a park.
I see, yeah.
So it'd be just kind of a copy of this block that we just walked down here. And instead we ended up with what we had. The widow, when he died, she's like, well, I got to sell this thing, talk to the city. And we're just going through the background of a guy named Parsons, who accidentally invented the plans for Lombard Street back in 1905.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But so that's cool. What you major in U of U?
I've not gone there yet.
You haven't gone
about
there?
to go there.
You're
And
about to go
I
there.
go to SF State currently. I'm about to transfer over to University
Oh,
of
that's
Utah
cool.
for civil engineering.
Yeah, buy your coat when you get there.
Yeah.
Nothing you buy here is going to be
I got this
adequate.
for $5 though at a thrift store, man.
Oh, that's cool.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. Yeah, my sister graduated from the U of U. My brother graduated from the U of U for his undergrad. So it's a good school. You got light rail. It's nothing like you've got here in this town, but you can get in and out of the university there.
It's a beautiful campus. Right on the hillside, amazing views.
Yeah.
Snows a lot.
Well, it's different. Salt Lake City, instead of having hills, it's hill. It's the one
Yeah.
big mountain. But that's really cool. And then what are you planning to major?
Urban ecology.
Urban ecology.
Kind of
Okay.
like what you do, but I think you're more in civil engineering, I think.
Yeah, we were trying to pave the environment. You're trying to save the environment.
I guess so.
Well, in urban ecology too, I know you get into the plant life as well.
I don't know much about it. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
started. Yeah.
So you did your associates, like you did your
fully did
English
training.
101.
Pretty much, yeah. Just the basics. I'm about to do all the fun
Okay.
stuff. All what you've done.
So, well, if you change your mind and you decide that you want to join the dark side, you can switch over to civil engineering and learn about asphalt and concrete and all kinds of great
I just
stuff.
might. It's inspiring.
Where there's overlap is soil. Soil engineering is so imprecise that when I took the one soil class I had to take, and I got really lost in, they used for pi, which is 3.14, they use 3. Because there's no point in getting more precise than 3, because that's how crazy soil is. You've got biomass in there and different compaction rates and different amounts of water and stuff. So on a project, to make up for that, they're like, well, we don't want the hillside to slip down. Let's plant the right plants on the thing. Yeah,
So
so
grounds the soil.
yeah, it keeps it from
Yeah.
turning into a mudslide and sliding down. And then the other street trees. Well, part of the reason why nobody wants to walk anywhere is because you're say from Modesto, right?
Yeah.
How's it walking through Modesto with no street trees in the
It's
middle of
super hot.
August?
Yeah, it's brutal.
It's like dying in the sun, And,
Yeah.
and so, but if you plant the wrong kind of street trees, you could end up where I went to college, the trees all kind of got sick and some sort of bug infected them. They had to cut them down anyway after 20 or 30 years. Or they used too much water, or they caused some sort of imbalance. And so if an engineer doesn't know, they're just saying, oh, street trees, okay, what's the cheapest tree we can buy? Okay, great, put them in. But if you talk to an urban ecologist and say, what kind of street trees should we buy? And you guys can come back and say, oh, well, buy the right kind of tree. It costs a little more, but in the long run, it saves you on maintenance, and people will actually want to walk around, and it won't.
Definitely.
So
That reminds me of your roundabout video when you were saying like roundabouts cost more to install, or almost the same, but there's no maintenance on them, so it's kind of that long-term investment.
yeah, if an engineer does their job right, they shouldn't just be looking at the upfront cost and saying, oh, well, don't put in a roundabout because that costs, $500,000 or $1 million versus a stoplight's 100 to 200, because you're not taking into account the electricity costs, having to buy new equipment. If you kind of bake it out and say, well, this is your cost up front and this is your 30-year cost, well, then people might make better decisions or different decisions. I'm not saying a roundabout's necessarily better. There are times that the roundabout's very bad, but there are times where a roundabout's really good. And so being able to make an educated decision, so when you go to a city council or something, they want to make the right decision, but sometimes we don't give them the full picture.
Yeah.
And we underprice things or forget to price things or overprice things, and we end up making decisions. That's where you get kind of the urban planner types who get in and say like, well, don't build another freeway, it'll destroy the environment. Well, you got to get in and look at all the costs, right? Like sometimes building a new freeway is right, and sometimes it's very wrong. This city famously, I mean, this is a good segue, because you walk around here and have all these neat things to walk around and do, and there's like some freeway to the south and connects to the Bay Bridge and stuff. Yeah. But at one point, I'll show you guys this in a second here, they wanted to chop up the city like a pizza, freeway.
Yeah, that's
so the highlighted ones are the ones that got built, but so let me show you. You imagine San Francisco if so the highlighted ones are freeways that got built, but the other ones never did. And what today is probably one of the most easy to walk around cities and take transits in America. Can you imagine if that had all been built? And I'm speaking this as a pro freeway guy. Like, I think freeways are awesome. I love freeways, but not in the middle of a really dense walkable place. It's just like the wrong thing in the wrong place. And so that's where getting in and talking with urban planners and ecologists and things makes a difference. Yeah. Got to look at the big picture. So when do you head off to school?
I head off to school next not August. Don't say April. August.
So for fall semester.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that'll be fun.
Absolutely.
You'll have to do what I never did. Go skiing.
Absolutely.
I grew up there and I've never been downhill skiing.
Never skied once there?
Never once.
Oh
I even took a ski lift. I was doing this TV news story of these like 90-year-olds that would go skiing at Alta. And so I got there, I'm filming, I interviewed the old people, I was filming them kind of in the parking lot, and I thought, I have to have footage of them skiing. So I just walked right up to the lift and just said, hi, I don't have a ticket, and I don't have skis. Can I get a ride to the top to film these 90-year-olds? And they knew the 90-year-olds, so they said, sure, go ahead, So I got a ride up there, and I jump off the ski lift, which was scarier than I thought it was, and I set up my camera, and they get off the lift, and these 90-year-olds just take off. I just got like 10 seconds of footage, but it was something. And then I marched back to the ski lift. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go back down. The guy's like, you're supposed to ski down. You're not supposed to go back down the lift. So anyway.
We gotta get back out there, man. Oh,
have fun in Utah. It's a beautiful state.
Very cool.
So, and University of Utah is a good school.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
See ya.
Take care.
What's your name again?
Nick.
Okay, thanks again, Nick.
For sure, thank you.
Well, let's take a look. While I was chatting with Nick, I saw a couple of things pop up. Oh my, you guys have been having fun chatting, and I've been missing out. Oh, so my brother sent $5 because he went to the U of U. But he says, for the record, the University of Utah is better, and Rob knows it. And I was like, well, look. Okay, BYU, I think the professors are a lot nicer, but I think the U of U professors are more knowledgeable. But yeah, you didn't hear that from me. I'm going to stick with my alma mater. All right, what else we got here? It seemed like somebody else. I really feel bad if I missed another contribution here. Okay. So we were talking about the guy. I'm going to change angles just so you don't have to keep seeing the same thing. Let's look at something else. There. So the guy, the parson in WSP, Parsons Brinkerhoff, comes to San Francisco and he says, okay, I've got my recommendations for the city. I want to recommend we do, overhead power. And he was recommending too, if there's a way to do power on the ground, but that's a little hard to do. In a subway, you're in a tunnel and you can put the third rail down, but on surface. So he was recommending ripping the cable cars out back in 1905. Thankfully, they didn't, because the cable cars they're a historic part of the city, though I've never ridden one. Maybe I need to do that today while I'm here. So there he is, Mr. Parson. But he also had a couple of crazy ideas. He said, they had these big hills, just put a tunnel underneath them. And some people can just go from the one side of the city to the other, and they're in their horse and buggy or whatever, and forget going up and back down, just go straight through. And I know the street Broadway does have the Broadway tunnel. I think that's the only one that got built. I don't know my San Francisco roads well enough yet to say for certain. 2 tunnels be constructed under Nob Hill, which would remove the cable lines going over the hill. So that part never got built. The cable car still goes over Nob Hill. And then you get to his 7th of 8 points, and this is the important one. I actually highlighted it. He says that 1 or more inclined races be constructed on the eastern slope of Nob Hill so that horses and wagons or carriages may ascend or descend freely. And so in old-timey speak, that's basically saying we're going to build this. But he was coming up with the idea in 1905. In fact, on the front page of the newspaper, he has a drawing of it. Or somebody had come up with a hill, and it has the switchbacks going back and forth. Through a different street. It was for, down there at Nob Hill, not here at Russian Hill. But the idea was already floating around 20 years before, 15 years before it ever got built. So you say, well, how come it ever got built? Because this was 1905, and something happened in 1906, the big earthquake. And so everything just went out the window at that point, because it's like, well, what's the point of dealing with trying to terrace streets when all the houses around the street are gone? And I got to go get that. Hold on. So there's some people who are thinking that in the city engineer's mind in 1922 when they built Lombard Street, in the widow, in her mind, and in her late husband's mind, that maybe deep down, this idea they had to build the switchbacks of Lombard Street came from this 1905 report. So this is a fascinating city. I almost feel like I could do a year's worth of videos just on this town. I'm not going to, but because you can get into the history of the tunnels, the history of the cable car, the other Lombard Street. I actually really want to go do a video on that when I get back to this town sometime, about the Lombard Street we don't ever go to. If you think about it, there's nothing about the other street. If you've gone and looked up, what was that, 901 Vermont Street? It's the same thing. In fact, I think it's two-way traffic. It almost got wiped out by the freeway. In some ways, from an engineering point of view, 901 Vermont's switchbacks sound more interesting to me than the tourist trap down here. But Vermont Street's way down there. There's no tourist stuff down there. It's by the freeway. Nobody cares about it. Where this is right here, Fisherman's Wharf is walking distance. That's where I was walking when I broke my thing. Did I leave it? Uh-oh. Did I leave stuff behind? Shoot. I don't have the thing I broke, which means I left it down there. Which means I might have left other stuff down there. Oh well. Anyway. All right, let's get back to some of your, I'll set that aside. We can talk a minute about a few other notes I've got here, but let me first look at some of your comments here. I'm all for a video on the crookedest street no one knows about. Yeah, I think I need to, where I live now, I'm about 6 hours away from San Francisco, so it might not be a day trip per se, but I've got money now. I could get a hotel and come back and do that, so maybe I need to do that. I won't be the next video because I'm working on the jaywalking video and do need to edit the other videos I've filmed too, but I'd really like to come back and look at the Vermont one. That would be fun. I'm getting Huell Hauser vibes, but for roads. You're not the first one to say that, and I didn't know who Huell Hauser was, so then I went and looked him up, and I realized where I knew him from. The Simpsons make fun of Huell Hauser in one of their episodes. He comes to town and he goes, "Hi, I've been going all over the country, and I've never found a town I did not like." And he meets Bart Simpson, and Bart gives him such a bad time with like pranks and whatnot that he goes on the news and he goes, "I've traveled this country and I like everywhere I've been until now." And then he just eviscerates Springfield and he says, "I'm giving Springfield the lowest score I've ever given a town, a 7 out of 10. All right, what else we got here? Vermont Street. How does the city deal with the large amount of tourists that drive down the road daily? That's a great question. And I ran out of time to properly research it. So I'll give you a little bit of what I know. Over time, again and again and again, people found out about this road and they would line up to go down it. In fact, I think that's some of what contributed in 1939 to them switching it to one way, just going downhill, because imagine Model Ts going up and down at the same time. And by 1939, people actually have some cars with a little bit of power, and anyway, it's a big mess. So many times, people who live on that street have tried to at least maybe even ban traffic. Just say, well, we don't want people going up and down Lombard Street anymore. We want them to go somewhere else. This is our own street for people who live on it, you know, local people, which is a theme that pops up in engineering and in planning all the time. You have a subdivision of houses, and a new subdivision is going to be built next to it. And there's like stubs where the new subdivision and old subdivision should connect. But they don't do it. They put up a fence. Because the people in the old subdivision, well, we are okay with people driving in our neighborhoods because that's for us, even though they're publicly maintained streets. But that neighborhood, we don't want them, those other people, the new houses, driving through our neighborhood. Meanwhile, you have the new developer who says, well, we're building these brand new pristine streets that are for people, our customers who are buying our new houses. And we don't want like that scary neighborhood, and some of the houses like aren't maintained well, and they're just like the wrong kind of people. We just don't really want them driving through our neighborhood. So you have two perfectly good subdivisions that don't connect, so that people who should be able to just go like, and to get to where they want to go, now they have to come out, drive on the major street, then come around like this, and then back another left turn and in. Why? The us versus them mentality of planning ruins good neighborhoods. And so that's what's happening here. They're saying, oh, well, Lombard Street, that's for us. That's for people who save their pennies and bought a house on the street. Not for the people who, you know, want to drive through, locals or tourists or whomever. I think you'd be surprised how many of those cars going down the hill. It'd be fun to survey them. I bet a bigger percentage than we think are locals and not necessarily tourists. I wouldn't be surprised if half of them are local. Hi! Somebody just waved. Either they're friendly or they know me. Okay, so we were talking about Lombard Street. Oh yes, closing it. So in the notes of that, again, credit to that woman at SF City Guides, which I normally don't cite a second-hand source this much, but she mentions that residents would go to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. San Francisco is interesting because it's both a city and a county. It's a singular entity. And in California, your county commissioners or county council, the people who run the county, it's the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors have a lot of power. So residents would go to the Board of Supervisors and say, in 1970, 77, and 87, close Lombard. We don't like people lining up. People who don't even live on that part of Lombard, they live down a block or two, and then every time they try to go out of their driveway, they've got to deal with the line of cars waiting to go down Lombard to close it down. They even had a Board of Supervisors at the time, this is his name you might know, named Dianne Feinstein, who later became a senator, backing their cause, saying, yeah, let's close it. But it never really stuck because it was a public street. So it keeps popping up again and again. I remember, I think it was in high school, so probably about 20 years ago, watching a video about, on the CBS morning news, the national news, about how they were talking again about, oh, maybe they need to toll Lombard or do something so not as many people go down it. And it never caught on then either. And that's when I first learned the name of the street. I remember seeing Lombard Street in movies. The old 1968 Disney film, The Love Bug. There's a scene where, you know, Dean Jones's character, I forget his name, the main guy who drives Herbie, the Love Bug, And he's out taking it for a test drive around the city to see how nimble it is, and you see him go down Lombard, you know. And so I knew this street. I just didn't know what it was called until I saw that news story, and I go, oh, it's called Lombard Street. You know, this was back before Google Maps, so you could just look it up, you know. 2017, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for San Francisco did a study about, it wasn't necessarily to toll Lombard Street, but it was something like you'd have to make a reservation to be able to go down Lombard. And I went through, it was through Wikipedia, and I went through to click to see the actual PDF of the survey study, and it's gone. So even in, what's that been, 4 or 5 years since then, oh gosh, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 6 years since 2018, even that seems to have fizzled. So I think that's just what keeps happening is it's a public city street. It's a line of cars, but there are lines of cars throughout California everywhere. So, all right, let's scroll through here and see. James Brett at $10. Thank you, James. Says the cable cars are a very interesting type of transportation. Do you know any fun facts about them? Do they exist anywhere else? And how are the cables powered? I am not that knowledgeable on cable cars yet. I do know it's a cable, and they've got a big motor with a clutch, I think at the top or bottom of the hill, and a pulley. It's just basically constantly spinning all the time. And then the cable car itself has like a brake. And when it's ready to go, the brake grabs the cable and then it pulls it up the hill. And they had to do something unique because you think about like a typical light rail train or something, those have some pretty strict rules about how steep they can go up because you have metal wheels on metal track. And I can't imagine you get too much of a grade and a light rail train would just sit there, just spin, you know. So the cable car is kind of a cool idea because the hill's irrelevant. You could pull as long as the brake can hold onto the cable strong enough, you could pull the thing straight up in the air. But then, unfortunately, that's all I know about cable cars so far. That's the like I say about these videos is it's not that I know a bunch of stuff and I make videos about it. It's that I have fun getting into Google Scholar and talking to people and trying to find out something I didn't know, and then, you know, I'll tell you about it. CJ Brick, hey, good to see you again. 499 says, congrats on 100K. Thank you very much, CJ. Blue, let me get it right, Blue Broham, $10. Thank you. Says, it might be off topic, but what's your take on motorcycle lane splitting? I hope the recording of the stream sticks around. I missed the first hour. I'm going to do whatever I can do to make sure this gets posted. This is my first live stream, so I don't know how it works, but I know it'll save a copy somewhere. It might be as simple as I just check a box and it appears. If worse comes to worse and you don't see it right away, I'll pull the video file from it and re-upload it, but we'll figure that out once it's done. Lane splitting is fascinating because I believe California is the only state that allows genuine lane splitting, where there's no real policy to it in the sense that I can be on the 91 freeway in Orange County, howdy, hi, and be going 70 miles an hour and have somebody scooch in their motorcycle going faster than 70 miles an hour between the two lanes of cars, just right on the dashed white line, just keep going. They really like to hang out between the carpool lane and the regular lanes because sometimes the carpool lane's a double line where people are less likely to make lane changes. And it's just a bizarre experience. It's one that in any other state, if somebody was on their motorcycle and cutting between cars on the white line, double white, or the dashed white lines, you'd cop and pull them over and be like, that's reckless driving. You're going to tear up your license. But in California, they've demonstrated that it actually can be done pretty safely, even though it's inherently really dangerous. You want a wild time and you're not too squeamish, go to YouTube after this live stream's over and search lane splitting crash. And you'll find all throughout California places though where people have biffed it and they're hurt, but they just tumble. You know, they don't necessarily die. Usually what it is when you have the traffic stopped and then somebody isn't really paying close attention because they're stopped, you know, in bumper to bumper traffic, and they start creeping over to make a lane change in the traffic, and somebody's zipping way too fast on their motorcycle going 40 or 50 miles an hour, and then hits the side of the car and tumbles. My thought on lane splitting personally gets more philosophical than lane splitting. Let's talk about motorcycles. We really let people get on a two-wheeled vehicle with no safety protection and just let them get on the freeway? But we grandfathered it in. Cyclists have demonstrated that they're willing to take on that risk. And so even though I tend to be more Mr. Safety about, oh yeah, we're going to mandate all, you know, automatic emergency braking and anti-lock brakes and roll cage technology and airbags and all this stuff, you know, you come to a motorcycle and it's like, well, you're never going to have airbags in a motorcycle, except for the one airbag motorcycle they were playing with putting airbags in. But so lane splitting's the same way. It's like, well, you're already engaged in a very dangerous activity anyway. I don't know. So lane splitting has been on my radar as another topic. I just am looking for the right expert to talk to about it. Because if I go to California Highway Patrol, they'll do a good job telling me what the law is in California. If I go to Nevada Highway Patrol, they'll tell me about what the law is in Nevada. That, okay, you can't lane split, but like when the traffic's stopped, you can creep along real slow at, you know, 5 miles an hour. But that doesn't get into the philosophical and engineering question about, well, should it happen at all, right? And so, I don't know. I've never ridden a motorcycle. Okay, what else we got here? Hi from Georgia. Hello. Hi from Pittsburgh. Hello. The car totally ran the stop sign, did they? I wasn't paying attention because I kind of got in the zone. I got in trouble once because I had my annual performance review, and I'm that guy in the office that everybody loves or hates, because I won't mean to. I'll go ask a question of a coworker, and then I ended up sitting and talking to them in their office for 45 minutes, and it ended up on my performance review of like, you really need to watch talking to people. Do people elsewhere actually come to 100% complete stop? I do, ever since I got it pulled over. So I was getting so sloppy with my California stops at a stop sign. I was going through them in second gear. I just, you know, over 20 years of driving, got sloppier and sloppier. And then I got to meet a nice patrolman in Spanish Fork, Utah, when I was visiting a friend of mine. And he didn't give me a ticket, but ever since then, I make sure I come to a full stop because he's right, I should stop. George Carnizes, I apologize on your last name. George Carnizes, $9.99, thank you. Everybody keeps rolling that stop behind you. And you've talked about red lights, but how about stop signs? That is a wealth of knowledge. So absolutely I should, because we had to work backwards again from what's the safety goal of this stop sign here. The goal isn't necessarily to demand everybody's, you know, if people roll a stop, it's inherently going to kill people. The goal is to say, okay, what's our safety goal, and let's work backwards from it. And I think unfortunately we found that in most places where hypothetically you could put a yield sign, if you put in a yield sign, people just treat it as like no sign at all, and they just go right through. So we put in a stop sign. But the question is, there are places where rolling a stop sign is inherently dangerous. Places where, you know, for instance, a bigger street with maybe a high volume of pedestrians at night, right? And so somebody rolls it. And rural highways where somebody comes up on a two-way stop and they sort of just roll through and don't look at the oncoming traffic, and bam, they get hit by a semi-truck. So definitely, and then getting into stop compliance, like what techniques have engineers learned to get people to actually comply with the stop? Because I remember one of our lab assignments, homework assignments we had in one of my engineering graduate classes was a stop compliance. All we did, so we went down, sat at a picnic table, like right by we had our tally sheet, and our grad school master's degree homework assignment was counting all the cars that would approach the stop sign and tally them. and then tally how many of them came to a full stop. And I think the stop compliance is about 33%. Now, as far as egregious violations, in the whole afternoon, only like one person just like blew through it, right? So you did have reasonable use of the stop sign, but legally, in terms of compliance, if somebody actually coming to a stop, it was like a third. So I don't know. It would be fun to see. I'm sure that's been well studied by some researchers, some departments of transportation, some universities and things. And so that's one of those things where if I really wanted to do this video, if it was high on my list to do next, I'd go to Google Scholar and I put in, you know, stop compliance, stop sign compliance, and, you know, stop sign fatalities, and see what sort of research comes up, what's the latest things. And sometimes I'll get lucky, I'll come across Transportation Research Board, which is the National Academy of Sciences, the, you know, or your tax dollars at work, federal tax dollars at work, and they'll have something that'll say like stop sign, stop controlled intersection compliance, best practices, state of the practice. And it'll be something that'll say like, here's sort of we went out and we researched all the different research and put it together in one journal article. And so then I can start looking at that and get it all at one source. And sometimes if it's a recent publication and the author's name is on it, I'll just call up the author and say, hey, you want to come on camera and talk about it? And half are shy and say no, and half end up being experts who you see on the video. All right, let's keep rolling there. Everybody keeps rolling stuff in my, okay. Rob waiting on the I-5 bridge video. Absolutely. I've shot footage of it. I haven't had time to edit it. That's one of the challenges of doing it all myself, is that I work the whole week, you know, 7 days a week doing things. And then something pops up like, hey, you bet you 100,000, you want to go up to San Francisco? Sure, you know, well, then that wipes out a couple of days because I'm researching this and driving. And so, but it does happen. I produce the videos as fast as I can. So it's not like I'm, you know, just kicking back playing video games. In fact, I don't play any video games, unfortunately. but the I-5 video is coming. I want to make sure I get it right. What's missing from the I-5 video is I could go through and kind of give you the timeline of what the newspapers said, show you some video of the bridge, and have a video. But I'd really like to see if I could find somebody who was involved with that failed bridge project. It's just harder to do because the coalition that was building the bridge dissolved, you know, 5-7 years ago. There's a new coalition to talk about the new bridge, but I kind of want to talk about the old one first, and then we can get into the new project to see, was this thing actually going to happen? So a lot of it is when I all of a sudden have on the line, say, the mayor of Hollister saying, yeah, I'd love to talk to you about the zigzaggy road. A video happens, and it jumps in front of everything because it's hot and fresh, and I've got the right person to talk to, and off we go. Versus when I end up with, you know, something that's a great topic, lane splitting, for instance. I love to talk about lane splitting. I've got a dash camera in my car, and I've been hitting save file on every motorcycle that's lane split me on the freeway for the last, oh gosh, 2 years. Probably have 50 clips of, you know, motorcycles going by me. I wanted to do that topic. Who do I talk to? And so that's why it sits on the back burner. I-5, I've got the footage. I just need to make it happen. So I haven't forgotten it, though. It is coming. Yeah, okay, let me start skimming through here some more. Cable Car Museum on Jackson Street. I don't think I have time to go to it today, but I do need to go to that. That's good to know, because if I ever do a video on the cable car, the museum's a good place to start. In fact, they may be the ones who might want to talk on camera about it. New York allows lane splitting in any sense. Legally? I didn't know New York allowed it. There was a post on Reddit about 2 weeks ago of somebody, I think in Queens or something, on the freeway, and all of a sudden you just see the New York State Police guy like flag him down and be like, over there, I can't believe you're doing this, and like turns his bike off and everything. So I thought it was illegal there, but okay, let's get caught up here. Sorry, I got to skip through so many good comments here. James Brett 199 says, what was your funnest video to make? Oh man, I really enjoyed the pedestrians at freeway interchanges because of my 8-foot tall guest who got to get a lot of adoration from honking cars and children who would see this giant chicken trying to cross the freeway off-ramp. And you'd see little kids that are 6 years old out the window like, "Hi, chicken, hi." That was a lot of fun. That guest will be back very soon. So I had a lot of fun with it. All the videos are fun in their own right because it's not just trying to be accurate, to try to get in and actually say, find out what is an engineering best practice, what is it we should be doing. But it's trying to figure out, well, how would I explain this to myself? Because a lot of engineering concepts, grad school, I wasn't an engineering undergrad, and so they started talking traffic flow fundamentals and stuff, and I'd have to slow down the professor and say, okay, wait. So it's sort of like when you're at the bank and the bank lines all come together, and and so in order to explain it to myself, a concept, then it gives me an opportunity to explain it to you. And so that makes all of them fun. So sometimes the more challenging videos, but boy, what's the most fun is very difficult to say because they've all been fun in their own way. But I do think anytime I can have my 8-foot tall avian pedestrian expert, that's always a hoot. Let's see. I feel bad. I'm going to scroll. I really want to answer every single comment. Caitlin, $2. Should speed limits be accurate to actual speeds? Yes and no. So it really depends on context. If you have a road that's designed for cars, not setting it to actual speeds, I think would be malpractice. You have a nice flat freeway out in the middle of Nebraska, and some well-meaning people, for whatever reason, say, well, driving 75 miles an hour is bad, morally or whatever, so we're going to make it 55. That's bad practice because the road's designed for a higher speed, and people aren't typically looking at their speedometer. They're just sort of driving what the road tells them to do. You don't necessarily have to put up signs that say, hey, there's a curve in the road, you need to slow down. You just have people intuitively, especially if they can see it, we're all going to slow down going into a curve. When you come to these streets here in San Francisco that are very narrow, I'm not going to want to go 65 miles an hour on a street that's narrow like these. It just, hold on, going to untangle this. When you have very narrow lanes that are probably only 9 or 10 feet, you have on-street parking. I don't even see a speed limit posted, but you don't really need one. You just kind of know, I got to just kind of creep along and go slowly because the hills and the obstructions and just the urban nature of it make it where you want to drive slowly. So yeah, here, if you had people going much faster than they should for some reason, you say, well, this is an urban context. People should be going 20 miles an hour. Well, you can't just take a road that's designed for 45 miles an hour and say, well, we're just sign at 20. Well, nobody's going because we're all scofflaws. They're all bad people. Well, they're not. When one person uses the road badly, that's a reflection on bad driving. But when everybody uses the road wrong, that's an engineering problem. That's something we have to solve. So if we want people to slow down, we got to change the road. You can't just take a 45 mile an hour street, sign it to 35, and hope everybody slows down. There's not enough cops in the world to enforce that. Not enough cameras in the world. That's just the wrong way to solve it. What's better is to come in and change the road, move curbs around, narrow lanes, put in trees, do things to make the road feel like a 35 mile an hour street. And then you almost don't even need to put signs up. You almost don't have to put cops out there patrolling it because people just go slower. So, but that said, there do need to be fast roads too. And like I say, that 75 mile an hour stretch of I-80, probably right. Okay, let's see what we got next here. Scroll down to, he touched one of the leaves. What do you mean? Oh, I touched lots of leaves. I hope that doesn't make you leave. Okay, $2.20 from Sev and V. Best county road infrastructure in California. Ooh, California is so hit and miss because every time I'll drive somewhere and I'll think, well, take like Los Angeles County, right? You drive on a lot of freeways and roads in LA County. They go, oh my gosh, like this is what happens when, well intended, but you spend the money on expanding the metro system at the expense of major upgrades to freeways, and you end up with deteriorated bridges and things, and it just looks bad. And then I'll go and I'll drive on I-5 through Burbank that they just redid, and it's gorgeous. It's perfect. Caltrans did a wonderful job. And so I think that's what makes it difficult is I don't think it's a matter of some counties are lazy and do a bad job and other counties do a good job, and so therefore we'll, you know, San Diego County's wonderful, but you know, San Bernardino County's bad or something. It really just comes down to the age of the project, because you go to any county anywhere in the U.S. and if it's a brand new project, it's going to be gorgeous, and if it's something that's sat back and decayed. And I've noticed in California too, the pavement management seems to be different. I don't have any data on this, so this is just me spitballing. But when you go to cold weather states, Utah in particular comes to mind, they have to have a very strict pavement management schedule to keep sealing the road constantly, especially asphalt, to keep water out of it, because if water gets in it, the water freezes and thaws and freezes and thaws, it creates potholes and destroys your road. And so getting in and regularly maintaining the roads, you can get a longer lifespan out of the road than if you just kind of leave it alone. But especially you get out to the deserts in California, Palm Springs and out that way, it gets so little precipitation and almost really never freezes, that a lot of roads, especially city roads, tend to just get paved once and then it sits there for decades. There's a road between San Bernardino and Riverside County along Interstate 10 called County Line Road. And it is the worst piece of pavement I've driven in California. And I used to live nearby there, so I drove it a lot. And my joke was, County Line Road sits literally on the county line. So San Bernardino figured Riverside would take care of it, and Riverside County figured San Bernardino would take care of it. And so nobody took care of it, and it was terrible. Now that's a myth, right? It's just a matter of it just, they have a project going on where they have a new sales tax measure that's going to go in and fix it up. They're going to put in some roundabouts. It'll be really nice. But it's just kind of funny that you do get different approaches to pavement management. You have different goals. You know, Los Angeles County, their goal really, especially in the central city, is not freeway expansion anymore. It's very expensive to expand the freeway because you have, you know, very expensive buildings right up on it. And if I allow even more cars through the freeway, then those cars end up on other streets, and then I have to widen those streets. And it's at a certain point it's saying, well, maybe we ought to, you know, we built plenty, now we'll approach on trying to serve new people with some mass transit. That's a different strategy than Kern County, where they are building new freeways because it's a growing area, it's green field with farm fields, it's lower density, and right now that's what makes sense. So it's really hard to compare and say one county's better than the other, one state's better than the other. Okay. Let's see, next we have, make a video on Interstate 10, but what part of Interstate 10? What aspect of Interstate 10? That's like saying, you should make a video on history. You know, I got a job as a transportation firm based out of San Francisco. Having never been to the US, what should I know? If you live in San Francisco, you're going to be broke, but you wouldn't need a car, especially if you're from a country that you can get about without a car. But other than the city of San Francisco itself, like this area right here, you're going to need a car. The United States after World War II had a choice. We could invest in mass transit and build up, kind of like Europe did, or we could invest in cars. The advantage of investing in cars that urban planners never talked about is it allowed us to use all the farmland and countryside to subsidize middle-class people. And so people could get cheap land and use it to have more in terms of a house and yard and that sort of thing than they ever possibly could afford in the city. And so building roads, plus when you build roads, you maintain the infrastructure, but you don't maintain the operations. The driver pays for their car, insures their car, fuels their car. The city, versus with mass transit, you're kind of paying, the city's paying for both, And so that's a choice we made. And as a result, we've locked ourselves into a system where you have to drive. There's some efforts that in little pockets of America where they're trying to create places where you wouldn't necessarily need to drive, but that's going to take a long time. Even if we are on the wrong course, being so dependent on driving, it's a hole that took us, 70 or 80 years to dig. It's not going to turn around in 2 years. It's take decades to do, and still probably won't be everywhere because a lot of very rural, low-density areas are going to stay car dependent for a long time. You're never going to have mass transit in rural West Virginia or central Utah or, some of these small towns in the Central Valley. So yeah, working in San Francisco, I think it'll be neat. San Francisco is one of the most unique cities I've ever been to. I just feel my wallet draining standing here. Although you guys are filling it. Oh my goodness. I almost could afford to get a fancy dinner in the city. No. Hey, let's go see what we got next. Any comments you can make on Canadian roads? $2 from Hubris Incorporated. I haven't been to Canada. I do know that if I did, I would want to see the 401 in Toronto, which is the widest cross-section of a freeway in North America, maybe even in the world, although I think Houston may be about to compete with it. But what Toronto did fascinating is there's a concept in, just like I gotta sneeze, hold on. Excuse me. If you have too many lanes on a freeway, there's a statistical probability that somebody's going to make a lane change. And every time somebody makes a lane change on a busy freeway, you kind of have to slow down to let them in. And so the more lanes you have, the more braking there is, and you start having some interesting problems of people starting to slow down because the road's wider. When you have 2 lanes, you have very low probability that somebody's going to make a 1 lane change. And if they do make a lane change, they're just going to change 1. But at 3 lanes, they might make 2 lane changes. And at 4 lanes, they might make 3 lane changes. And at 5 lanes, they might make 4 lane changes. And so you eventually hit a point where the freeway gets so wide, you start generating traffic just from the lane changes, and it starts canceling out the benefit of the freeway being wide. Toronto got around that by saying, oh, okay, well, we'll have like these lanes be the through lanes, and these be the general purpose lanes, and these be like collector lanes for the on-ramps and off-ramps. And I would love to see that in person. But I haven't, like I said, I never left the United States. I need to change that. I haven't done it. And then I know for the Olympics, British Columbia built some interesting new improvements to a freeway that goes up to the mountains. But yeah, the other thing I've seen is British Columbia is very aggressive enforcing speed limits that people don't obey. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that if everybody's violating the speed limit, maybe there's something wrong with there's something either wrong with the speed limit or wrong with the road. You don't have everybody driving being wrong suddenly. I obey the speed limit great when I'm here, but now when I'm here, I'm bad. And so are all my friends. It's like, well, no, you either need to fix the road or up the speed limit. And I know British Columbia, that's been an issue from what I've seen, but I haven't been there, so I don't know. Okay, it's starting to get dark. Won't be too long. I'll just be standing. You see a black screen with some street lights. James Brett for $4.99. Thank you. What do you think about the high-speed rail system from LA to San Francisco? I gotta find the right person to talk to, because I think it's a neat system once it gets built, but it has some inherently weird problems about it. The New York Times had a great piece on it where they talked about how If you really wanted a bullet train between LA and San Francisco, you take the most direct route. But because California is funding this and not the federal government, it has to get support from the California legislature. Well, you're not going to get a bunch of people in counties outside of LA and San Francisco County to support this project unless it benefits them somehow. So when they drew the route, it didn't just go straight from one town to the other. It zigzagged. It went like over here, and then it went over to Palmdale, and then back to Bakersfield, and then back to Fresno, and it kind of, so it does this, like, if you look at the map, it kind of like S-curves itself. Like LA, to get the section in the future that's going to go from LA to San Diego doesn't go from LA to San Diego. It goes LA to San Bernardino, and then down to Temecula, and then down to San Diego. Because what they wanted to do is basically hit every population center they could and zigzag their way through. So that was one problem. Two is that there are different ways engineers deliver projects. And I'm no expert on this, but I do know there are some where the government gets in and they really take charge of the project. Think like NASA and the space shuttle. The space shuttle was NASA's project. NASA owns this thing, and then they hire subcontractors to come in and build parts of it. Okay, your company builds the fuel tank, your company builds the launch pad equipment, your company builds the panels for the heat shield, you know, but NASA's in charge, they put it all together. California could have done that for the high-speed rail train, but they chose to do it the other approach, which is think about like NASA working with SpaceX, where NASA says, hey, we want to hire you to take us and our satellites and people to space, so provide us something that can achieve this goal. And then SpaceX, they go and they figure it all out, and they come back with a bill and say, okay, for you to get a ride, it's going to cost this much. And, you know, so NASA has a lot of input on it because they're the primary customer, but ultimately a lot of the decisions are done by the contractor. That's contractor-led versus government-led. From what the New York Times article indicated, the high-speed rail project was like that. You had, instead of the state of California saying, okay, we're in charge and we're going to tell everything, they kind of went to a consulting firm and said, all right, well, this is what we need to build. You kind of tell us what we need to do. And a good businessman's going to come back and say, oh, yeah, you're definitely going to need this and this and this and this. And so it sort of got carried away because the contractor is going to say like, oh, spare no expense, sure, we'll do this right, you know, and that got very expensive. And so some of that's been reining that back in to say, okay, maybe the state of California needs to take more charge on their project, even though that's a valid delivery method. For roads, Florida does that sort of thing all the time, where they'll come in and they'll say, here's our budget, here's the project, you guys come in and just kind of meet our specifications of what we want done, and we'll write you a check every year for our... Hello? We'll write a check every year and you guys just deliver it. I can't remember. There's proper terms, and I'm sure somebody right now, you're sitting there on the chat and you know exactly what they're called. But there are different forms of public-private partnerships, different delivery mechanisms. Anyway, so, and then finally, the last part of it was the high-speed rail industry doesn't exist in the United States. And there's federal legislation that says if you're building stuff with American tax dollars, you need to support American companies. So what American company do I go to buy a bullet train? It doesn't exist. And so I think they kept hoping that, well, maybe we'll get an administration that will give us a waiver. So they're like, okay, the Obama administration will give us a waiver. They didn't get it. Trump administration, can we get around the Buy America Act? And they said no. Okay, how about the Biden administration? Can we get around the Buy America Act? No. It's really popular right now to say, no, we should buy American. But that's really difficult when you're like, well, but I can't buy a locomotive. So California is having to create the entire high-speed rail industry. And that's really expensive. And so that's why there's big cost overruns. So like the route doesn't make sense. Sounds like from the New York Times point of view, the state sort of lost control of the project and it spun out of control. And the industry doesn't exist yet. It probably should. Like if California can be successful and get a high-speed rail project done, that's good news for Texas, that's good news for the Northeast, that's good news for a lot of places in this country that want to do similar projects. They're just letting California pick up the bill of doing the hard part up front. So anyway, we'll see. I do believe it'll get built. And there are all the time infrastructure projects like the Golden Gate Bridge that probably didn't make sense at the time. And there was probably good methods to come in and say, why are we wasting so much money on this unnecessary bridge that goes up to Marin County up there, or I forget what county that is. No, nobody lives up there. Why are we building a huge bridge? But we did it, and now it's really important. Imagine Northern California without the Golden Gate Bridge. You couldn't. It generated economic activity. It changed people's lives. We were able to get things done. Same thing you could say of the subways in New York, or the subway that Mr. Parsons shut down here in San Francisco. Imagine they had built that subway. We'd benefit from it now. So it just really comes down to, I think, in the long run, let's get the thing built, try to wrangle it back, try to get the price down, try to do a better job with it, get it built, and future generations 50 years from now will be really grateful that we built this thing, that you don't have to use a car to go from LA to San Francisco. So, but as it is, I'm not expecting to ride it anytime in the next 10 years. So, all right, let's see what other comments we got. Brick Attack for $5 says, thoughts on the history of Lombard Street. I drove it a lot while working in town for a COVID test clinic for Carnival, driving people to quarantine hotels, I'm guessing. I hadn't even thought of that. So I'm assuming what you're saying is somebody would test for wanting to go on a cruise with Carnival and test positive, so you got to stick them in a quarantine hotel because you don't want them going on the ship and getting everybody sick. I think the history is fascinating because so often stuff is just there, and we just kind of assume like, oh, it just sort of happened. But there had to be a very real person at some point in history who said, yeah, let's terrace the street. And so they did, and they did it. And it's just fascinating to hear. And what was their motivation? Well, we want the property to be worth more money, And I think partly why it's fascinating is there are decisions we're making now. It could be as simple as like, yeah, let's add a bike lane to this street. That seemed insignificant at the time, but maybe 50 years or 100 years from now, it might be really important. And so trying to really slow down and think through our projects, get outside of our ideology. I'm kind of a pro-car ideology. And so it's good to get out of my wheelhouse and say, well, I got to stop and think about other aspects of this. And in turn, there are urbanist types, people who hate driving, people who see the climate issues with driving, who every once in a while it's good to get out of their wheelhouse too and say, maybe the car, we can't just ignore it. It's got to be part of the, discussion too. But if we stop and slow down and think it through, what's so cool about transportation is it's not inherently Republican or Democrat, right? It's just trying to just do good practice. And when you do good practice, you follow the data, you slow down, you listen to as many stakeholders as you can usually come with some sort of compromise project that benefits everybody. You get a lot of, that's what's so neat. We live at a time where we're all ready to just punch each other in the face over politics, and we don't have to with transportation. We can just focus on building something that's good, And if you walk away from me and say, I have no clue what Rob's politics are, I've done my job, because transportation, while being the most political in terms of policy of all of the engineerings, it's not partisan politics. And that's really neat. Now, what that has to do with Lombard Street, I don't know. Okay, Nick Sutton for $10. Thank you, Nick. Says, congratulations, Rob. Sorry I'm late to the live stream. Well, the good news is, as soon as I click the right buttons, and you guys have been coaching me on what to do, I will make sure that it's available after the fact for you to go back and rewatch. At some point in the next few days, I'll sit myself down for 2 hours and watch myself and go, oh my gosh, why did I say so many times? Thank you again, Nick. Beta 01011. I'm sorry, I don't speak binary. Beta for $5. Thank you. Says, do you see the purple streetlights? I think that's my. If you're saying purple on there, that's my phone. I'm on the selfie camera. I don't have a nice like S22 phone because there's no headphone jack, and dadgum, I want my headphone jack. So I have a cheaper phone that has a headphone jack, and the camera's not as nice, so it could be showing up purple. Let's see. Master Singleton, $2 Australian, thank you, says, should HOV and hot lanes be converted to bus lanes? Well, do you have enough bus passengers that that's the best use of the lane? The goal of a managed lane is to help move more people. And so it's counterintuitive, because I remember I actually posted a video, it might have been on this channel a long time ago, or maybe one of my other channels, where I was complaining about the toll lane, the high occupancy toll lane, where you can either be in a carpool or pay a toll to ride on this lane of Interstate 10 in LA. And I was down visiting LA, and it seemed like there was nobody using the toll lane, like very few cars going by, and we were all in bumper to bumper. And I went on YouTube and I go, this is stupid. But what I didn't realize is it's true. A HOV lane, carpool lane or a toll lane doesn't move as many cars in an hour as a regular lane can. But the goal isn't cars, it's people. So if each of those cars has 2 people in it, they count as 2 cars. And now you move a whole lot more people if you count it in terms of people. So then you get at a bus. You say, okay, well, if I could move that many people with 2 people in the car, what if I had, I don't know what in America, the typical occupancy of a bus is probably like 6 people, but let's say 10 people or 15 people. Yeah, that's great. What are your headways on the bus though? Because if that bus only runs once an hour, 15 people an hour for an entire lane, that seems like a very bad use of a lane. It's still, let the bus share with the toll people, But you also have to look too, if you have a carpool lane or a toll lane, nobody ever pays the toll. Nobody carpools because maybe it's a jobs housing imbalance where it's a lot of people who live here and commute here, and so you get a lot of, well, maybe a better use of the lane is to make it a reversible lane and say, well, we'll open the lane up to everybody, but it'll go one way in the morning and one way in the afternoon because we're not going to get the carpoolers out of it because it's people commuting to work. Maybe that's a better use of it. So that's what's kind of cool with managed lanes, is managed lane doesn't have to be a specific type of managed lane. It can be, now of course on a freeway, they're not just going to turn on lights and say, have at it, free for all, go the other way. Like you've seen on some streets with reversible lanes. They have a concrete barrier that they slide back and forth. But anyway, that's kind of my thought on it is, yeah, you really just look at how many people the bus will move. Let's see. David McDonald, Australian $10, thank you. You say, what can you say about mixed traffic on streets and roads and what is appropriate? They have to deal with kids on push bikes and skateboards through cars, buses, perhaps trams, Pantex. I'm not sure what a Pantec is. And oh no, hold on. For those tuning in late, I broke my thing that's supposed to hold my phone. I smashed it in the door of a parking garage. So all night I've been just like balancing my phone on these 2 things. And so, and let me plug hopefully you can still hear me. I plug my mic back in. So when I go to click the screen, I sometimes drop it. And B doubles, I'm not sure what a B double is. Let's talk about mixed traffic on streets. So when you have areas where you kind of just open it up and make it like a mall, and I'm actually going to talk about this a little bit briefly in my next video where we talk about jaywalking in California. It used to be all streets were basically malls. You go look at old footage from like a century ago, and it's people just kind of walking around doing whatever they want. The streetcar and the horse and buggy and the covered wagon and a few Model Ts and people just walking in and out of traffic whenever they wanted. It was genuinely mixed traffic. And I think that we still today have places where that's appropriate. You think about a mall itself, we just don't allow cars inside of a mall. It's for us walking around. So you have some people on the little golf carts and some, hold on, my phone's ringing. I think that's people who I rode with who are wanting to say they want to go home. I want to get caught up on your questions, and then it is starting to get dark, so I have to wrap up pretty soon. But hey, it's that self-driving car thing again. I don't know if you can see it. Shoot. Okay, well, I missed it. Anyway, so in an appropriate place, I think you can make it work. But it's got to be a place where the car definitely, somebody driving a car definitely feels like they're a guest in the space. Sort of like if I drove on the in the middle of the mall, I would definitely feel like a guest there. That's not going to be every street. And so you get into these suburban streets, these bigger streets, you do really need to separate out pedestrians and cars from one another. And the faster the street gets, you know, I think some of these streets where you start getting above 40 miles an hour, even just having a normal sidewalk is probably bad practice. You really ought to have a dedicated trail off to the side. But in a downtown area where it's 5 miles an hour and you make it really feel weird for the car, where there's like cobblestones and like tables for restaurants sitting out in the street and whatnot, and you feel like, yeah, I gotta go 5 miles an hour. Yeah, you can make it work. You know, I don't have the best practices off the top of my head, but I've seen it done. And the engineers who put it together and planners, they can come up with something that works. But I do think you still have to be careful about maybe putting some barriers and things to make sure pedestrians don't get run over. Okay, let's see. I'm starting to get text messages saying I've got to get ready to head out here. So let's see if I can catch up. Pete Martin for $9.99 says, any YouTube collabs you'd like to do? When knowing better asks his viewers who he should collab with, I said you. Well, I appreciate it. I've been small enough of a channel that when I've kind of tread the waters a little bit to do a collab, I don't really hear back. There's a prominent engineering channel who was very nice, and he gave me a couple bucks on Patreon. I think he's a regular patron. And so I messaged him and I've said, hey, you know, I happily drive to you if you wanted to collaborate on something sometime. And I never heard back. And that's okay. You know, people get busy and, you know, don't have time to entertain every offer that pops up. And plus it would be mostly beneficial more to me than to him, you know, so. People in the past had suggested I collaborate with not just bikes. And while I'm willing to do that, I worry that our approaches to solving the problem are a little bit different. I'll still gladly meet with him, but I think he's coming at it from a ideal that we should achieve at all costs. And I'm coming at it as here's where we're at, what are little steps we can take to improve it. And so they're two different worldviews, and I don't know if that collab would work well or not. But it doesn't matter. I don't think I'm even on his radar as somebody he'd want to collaborate with. But I'm open to things as they pop up. I don't have a ongoing relationship with enough other channels to. The one channel I do have a relationship with, we have nothing in common. I've really struggled because I've wanted to do a collaboration for a very long time, and I just can't figure out how to put it together. When I do, you'll get a video on that. Okay, let me get. Let's see, CJ Brick again, $4.99 says, if the city wanted to implement a BRT or LRT system, what would the requirements be for that city? Could a city like Salem, Oregon, or even Bend, Oregon? The main thing is, I'm going to start walking down the street here, but I'll keep talking to you, is you need the money to build the system, and you need to have enough ridership to pay to maintain the system. You know, if I have a too small of a community and nobody rides my transit system, I'm not going to be able to pay the drivers, you know. And it's not to say that you make your money on transit from the people paying, you know, $3 to ride the train, or the bus. Sometimes that's only a little tiny portion of the cost to run the system. But you need a big enough tax base. You gotta, cities have to attach it to some sort of sales tax or something so that it can sustain the system. And so I think that's what's made BRT a lot more appealing, is there's a lot of cities that just don't qualify enough for hi. Hold on a second, the people I'm riding with. Are you guys needing to go home?
No, we could travel around with you if you want.
Do we want to go see the other Lombard Street?
Yeah,
You want to put in 901 Vermont Street?
let's do it.
And then I'll just kind of live stream in the car and answer questions. Let me put my tripod away. And so I think that's what's a holdup with Salem doing BRT or that sort of thing is, well, what's paying for it? You can get the voters of Salem to say, yeah, we'll raise our property or sales tax to pay to maintain a transit system, then you get a transit system. You know, if you don't, you don't. But I don't think that's. I think if you have the money to build the system, you can get it built. There's no community too small that couldn't have light rail. They just to decide if that's a priority, and usually there's a lot of other stuff, you know, like fixing potholes that are more important. So 901 Vermont Street.
901 Vermont.
And we'll see how dark it is over there. I've never seen it. The other Lombard Street, it's about 3.5 miles away, and I wasn't feeling adventurous enough to want to walk down there.
Is that it?
Is it down by the 101 freeway?
Looks like it.
Oh, no, that's not it.
Here, I'll let you.
901 Vermont. Oh, yeah, that's it. That's it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Let's find the next comment here. Colin Craft, $5 says, congratulations, I love your content. It reminds me of There Goes a Blank VHS tapes. I had those as a kid. Oh, with I'm truck driver Dave. I'm truck driver Becky. Yeah, I was a fan of those as a kid. They really had a great series of videos. I think the guy's name was Dave Hood, and he was out of, I think, Inland Empire. And I thought about that over the years going, you know, if I wanted to try to do something like this in the 80s and 90s, I'd be trying to convince some people to give me some money. And by the way, you can see this car, big V6 engine, is just struggling to go up this hill. And so you get the stop signs, you talk about rolling a stop sign, you can't, because you get to the top of the hill, you just see the sky. You know, you don't even get to cheat and say like, oh, it doesn't look like anybody's coming, you know, because the angle you approach is so steep. But yeah, I love those There Goes Whatever video, and that's what I think, you know, today a guy like Dave Hood probably would have just done a YouTube series or something. So I actually get you an interview with the mayor of Carmel if you'd like it, and other sources. Oh yeah, shoot me an email, news@roadguyrob.com, Jack, and yeah, I don't know when I get to Carmel, but that would be great. And there's probably a number of you who've offered comments like that today. What I'm going to do as a homework project is definitely go through here, and any comments you've had like that, I'll try to. I tell you, if you can shoot me an email, if you know somebody who's good to interview, that way I get in touch with you, because even if I do go back and find your comment, I'm not sure how I would reach out to you, because I just have your username, and I don't think YouTube just lets me send a direct message like that. Santa Claus is back again, $4.99. He says, what do you think of BOSS, bus on shoulder system, that they have in parts of North Carolina? Bus is allowed to bypass traffic jam by driving on the shoulder. I haven't studied them. I do think it goes back to what we were talking about a managed lane. Of a shoulder is for breakdowns. And so you got to look and say, okay, if somebody breaks down and they don't have a lane anymore, and that's a common enough thing, so now they're not stopping in the shoulder anymore, they're now having to stop in a different lane and block traffic. Is that a bigger problem than having to deal with just having the bus be in general traffic? And so that's where the engineering studies become really important, because they can come in and estimate and try to calculate, okay, what is the loss and safety of losing the shoulder? What's the potential risk of a crash, because it's confusing because somebody thinks they can drive their car down it now. Versus, okay, how many people are going to ride the bus? How many more people are addicted to ride the bus because you now have the bus able to skip traffic? And if you have good headways and you got a lot of bus routes that use it, and you could have, a few hundred more people per hour use that lane instead of 0, that'd be pretty neat. But they got to make sure they implement it right, and they do. That's why transportation stuff never happens fast, is because you have people who are trying to. Let me show you outside while I'm talking. It's a lot more in my face. You have engineers who are very smart, who do these engineering studies to make sure that you actually get benefit out of the project. You don't just spend a lot of money and introduce a new problem. Let's see, scroll through some more comments here. If I take the bus and I have to walk through the whole parking lot, where in the car can I park near the front? They have reversible lanes in Seattle. They have reversible lanes on 93. Let's see, pre-recorded. I am definitely not pre-recorded. Okay. $10. Spencer writes, speaking of managed lanes, come check out Arizona and the new lanes they're building on Interstate 17 north of Phoenix. That would be a cool video. I drove on 17 probably about a year and a half ago. I don't remember. I'll have to go see what they're doing. But also check out the 303 improvements where the new TMSC plant. Oh, okay. TMSC is the Taiwan semiconductor. Oh, sorry to get off topic here, but we've got a visitor here. I think that's the cable car. Look at that. Just like the Rice-A-Roni commercial, the San Francisco treat. So yeah, as I understand it, it's grabbing a cable that's in the street. Oh, shoot. It's grabbing a cable that's in the street, and then it has a brake that grabs that cable, and the cable drags it up the hill. Yeah, the big semiconductor plant, Taiwan Semiconductor, is building a place in Arizona. I didn't realize it was off that outer loop, that loop 303, so might be worth an Arizona trip at some point. Okay, let's see. Scroll down some more. See. Correct, YouTube does not have a system for direct messages. Yeah, so if you were reaching out to me with advice for a topic or somebody to interview or whatever, do email me, news@roadguyrob.com. But you can also find that address at my website, roadguyrob.com. Okay, let's see. Master Singleton, $2.74, Australian, says, anyway, before I go, Rob, GN, good news? I'm not sure. GG, good game. Congrats on 100,000 subs. Well, thank you very much, Master Singleton. Let's see. And I think I'm caught up. Neat. So now I can start going back and looking at the non-paid comments too. 24 live stream. I'm not sure what that is. I stalked your work history. Why have a master's in civil engineering but only ever do journalism and radio? Sometimes the radio business and creating media, you ever have a friend who is like really into guitar or electric bass or something, and they just, for the life of them, like just keep playing gigs, and they never really make any money at it, but you just can't stop them. They just keep doing it. Some people, media gets that way, and that's kind of what happened to me a little bit, where I worked radio much longer than it made sense financially. I went to approach. I had a job offer with the California Department of Transportation. A family emergency of sorts came up, and then the pandemic, so I wasn't able to take the job. It would require me moving away from somebody I was helping care for at the time. And then with the pandemic, I just started getting back into my old roots and saying, well, let's produce some media. And like that friend who just keeps playing gigs, I kept, we got some jaywalkers here, which is now decriminalized in California unless there's an immediate risk of a collision, which technically that would be the case. But we'll talk about more in the next actual video I make. But okay, so how far does the GPS say we are from
13 minutes.
13 minutes? Well, if you want to stick around for 13 more minutes, some of you have stuck around for 2.5 hours. We'll get to the other Lombard Street, and it'll be my first time seeing it too.
We're doing scenic San Francisco.
Scenic San Francisco, that's right. Oh, GN equals good night. Rob, will you do one on Ohio freeway interchanges similar to the one on 270 and SH 161 northwest side of Columbus? I'll have to take a look at that and see. In particular, what makes that special? You know, I don't know enough about that freeway interchange. I know a lot of freeways. I actually don't know Columbus at all. I've been through Cleveland, and I know Cleveland has a fascinating stretch of I-90. I'd heard about it. I got to drive it a year ago, where the freeway basically makes a right-hand curve, 90-degree curve, that feels like the kind of curve you'd see in a neighborhood, where just all of a sudden you have to make this sharp turn, and it seems very, very unsafe. And I don't think that it's when they built the interstate system, the engineers are like, we're going to do a bad job. I think there was an existing highway that was there, and they were trying to squeeze the interstate into an existing piece of infrastructure, and they ended up with something that's pretty lousy. But if you have to put up gigantic signs and flashing lights that say slow down, there's a curve, there's something wrong with the road itself. But Santa Claus again. Yeah, this is like Christmas Eve. I'm getting all kinds of presents. Thanks again, Santa Claus. Try a video on I-40 from Barstow, California to Wilmington, North Carolina. Cool sign on both ends referencing each city. I've seen the Barstow sign. That one's a lot of fun, where it says, Wilmington, North Carolina, so many thousands of miles. The other fun thing to dig into, and I have some newspaper archives on this, is in the era of the 1950s and 60s, when we were building the freeways, the federal government, I'll come back to this in a second. I want to point this out. Notice all the stoplights are red, and both countdowns are going at the same time. This is a scramble. A Barnes dance is the term, I think, in New York, because they called it after an engineer named Barnes. But in a Barnes dance, you can basically cross, I think even diagonally legally, because it's legal to basically have pedestrians take over the intersection. There's a Barnes dance that went in Hollywood recently, but for the most part, I think part of why the Barnes dance went out of favor is because once the pedestrians take over the intersection, they don't like to give it back. So it's kind of hard when you get your green lights trying to get where the car's moving again. So I think that's why New York City phased them out. But I need to do more research on those. But anyway, in the 50s and 60s with Interstate 40, they needed to go through the mountains outside of Barstow. And we were feeling bad that we, as a country, had bombed Japan twice in the war. And in the Bible, it talks about how they'll take their weapons and they'll bang them into plowshares, in the era of peace. And so the government literally had a program called Operation Plowshares, named after that verse in the Bible, to reference nuclear, to say we're going to take nuclear but use it for productive things instead of for destroying things and bombing things. And so part of Operation Plowshares was to say, hey, we need to dig a canyon through the mountains. Why don't we use nuclear bombs to blow up the mountain for I-40? And that was batted around for a while. It kind of started going out of vogue as, you know, people soured on nuclear in the late 50s and early 60s, but it wasn't totally out of the question. And so anyway, yeah, I-40, that'd be another fun one too. That's the challenge, is there's never-ending stories that are just fascinating, because billions or trillions of dollars on roads infrastructure, and every piece of infrastructure we build has a story. There's some sort of bus lane or something there. I don't know what the story is on it, but there's a story. I bet it's interesting. You know, the side of the road there where the cars are parked, you've got little bollards, little plastic delineator posts separating the bike lane. There's a story. There were public meetings. There were, you know, a day where somebody in the city transportation department ordered them and shipped them over, and somebody glued them down. And, you know, so there's just so much that happens. For every one video I try to put out, I have ideas. You know, you guys send me ideas for 8 more videos. You know, I'm getting upside down very quickly on ideas. Okay, let's see. What kind of car are we riding in? We are riding in my friend's Honda Pilot. So I drive a Honda Fit, which is like a much smaller version of the Pilot. Lambo. Looks like a Lambo steering wheel, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Big H's for Lambo.
I could use a Lambo.
Porsche 911 GT3. You mean a Volkswagen Beetle? Oh, no. Yeah, let's see. Start scrolling through. In Miami, Florida, they are building a bus route that has a road built next to the road that has the bus stations and stops when it comes to the intersections. Is that the bus rapid transit, where it's sort of like you build a light rail train, but it's a bus and it has its own road? I know I talked about that in one of my videos. Maybe that's what Miami's building. And scroll down some more. Not a barn stance unless it's striped for it. Otherwise, it's an exclusive pedestrian phase, as Cap Hayes. Oh, okay. So that intersection, yeah, did not have diagonal crosswalks. So a barn stance is when you actually put crosswalk markings going diagonally across. And because that intersection didn't have it. Okay, well, I learned something new. Let's see. Scroll down some more. He's still going. Yeah, I know. Well, I really want to see, I probably would have wrapped up the live stream because it's dark, but I really want to see that other Lombard Street on the way home. My friend's offering to give me a ride to it. 7 minutes away now, 7 minutes away. Why not? Let's go see it. We can drive down it, see why it's not famous. It may be pretty lame. I don't know. It might be. Have you seen San Francisco? They've closed most of Market Street to cars. I haven't gone down Market Street. I'll have to check that out. There's a BRT in Oakland called Tempo. Do they have BRT in San? They've got all kinds of stuff in the city. I wouldn't be surprised, but I would think if it's BRT, it would be maybe more a commuter thing that goes out on the bridge to Oakland, but I don't know. Must be nice to have internet like he does. I'm not sure what you mean, Carmen. I would hope you have internet. You're watching this on the internet. Maybe you're watching it on a postcard that got printed out. Those bollards on parking lanes were done here in New York City in the Bronx. Yeah, I saw on, I listened to a little bit of New York City here. I listened to 1010 Wins on my phone. All news, all the time. They've talked some about some of the projects the city's been doing. I think there's a Queens Boulevard or something. I can't remember. There's a project going on where they're doing a road diet. But, you know, of all the places to say, hey, we're going to actually try to make it a good experience for riding a bicycle and walking around, wouldn't it be the 5 boroughs? you know, it's got the population density for it. It seems like that would make a lot of sense. You know, I think that, talking about not just bikes, I think one of the differences in philosophy his channel and mine have is that he says you should be able to have really nice, you know, San Francisco, New York quality pedestrian infrastructure on every street in the world. And that's a good goal. You know, maybe in 50 years we'll get there. And it's something we need to be thinking about as we build new streets. I'm saying let's start with downtown. Most cities, places you live, have a downtown, and you go down there, and it's a very good place. Most of it, because we just the park, and it'll be great. And what we're learning is no, that destroyed the downtown. You want to be able to walk around downtown, and so let's go back and fix that. You know, go to downtown Houston. He famously has a video where he talks about how terrible Houston is. Neat. What can we do to fix downtown Houston so it's less focused on getting people on and off the freeway and into parking garages, and more focused on, once you've gotten there by train or parking garage, actually walking around. And yeah, it's a little slower to drive your car, but that's okay because it's downtown. And then you can work outward from there. You can say, okay, now that we got downtown excellent, you know, where it's a wonderful place to be, well, maybe some of the communities next to downtown would like to do the same thing, and the communities next to those communities. And eventually, in 50 years, it's nice to walk anywhere in America. But you don't do it by complaining and saying, oh, the car is evil, and we hate the car, and this is immoral. It's fine to lecture all day, but that doesn't solve the problem. What solves the problem is actually getting in and saying, okay, what's a specific change we can do today? And so I think that's one of the things that we kind of got into a little bit of a tiff in the comments, the little bit of interaction I had with him, is he hates hawk beacons. The hawk beacons where you can push the button in Tucson, and on a big arterial street, the light would go red and everybody could cross. And he made a video saying he hated those. And I don't know why. And I think his argument is ideological. He's saying, well, the big nasty street shouldn't exist in the first place. And I'm saying, well, it does. So do we want to make it better or not? Yeah, okay, if a hawk beacon is bad, then what do you do? And the answer is not to say, well, we'll just get rid of cars. Tucson, Arizona, the cars are there. It's going to take decades to change that. And you have issues you run into with local residents who elect politicians and hire engineers who might like being able to drive their cars. So even if, you know, maybe morally he's correct, from a practical point of view, you have a, you know, mayor say, that's it, we're going to make all the streets narrow. How long is he going to stay mayor? So I'm saying, okay, well, let's work the other way around and say, well, we've got a problem. People can't safely cross the street. How do we get them across? Well, put in a hawk beacon. And then we can go from there of trying to make it better, you know. Okay, we're on Vermont. We're almost to the other. So you can see the freeway is like right there. In fact, that's the ramp coming off the freeway. Just behind these buildings is US 101 freeway. And it curves, and it almost wiped out at the end of this street here, which is the other Lombard Street. So let's see what we got here. Master Singleton, Australian $2. Thank you again. Can you do a video on pedestrianization of roads? Yes, I need to do that. I need to. I interviewed somebody talking about, oh gosh, what do they call them? Flush streets or flat streets. But the idea is the sidewalk and street are at the same level. And it's a little scary of an idea, but I think somebody sent me an email talking about how their town in Michigan had done that. And it sounded really neat. Definitely not something you want to do everywhere. ACR Speed, $5. Thank you, ACR Speed. Congrats on 100K. I really enjoyed this stream. I wouldn't mind if you did more of these. I love hearing you talk. Well, considering This is the most profitable day of my entire life. Yeah, we'll do another live stream again real soon.
Well, here we are.
Okay, so we are here at the other Lombard Street. No lines. Nobody is here wanting to go down the hill. But it says
Go
tight.
down it.
Yeah, go ahead and drive down it. Tight turns. Trucks not recommended. And just like Lombard, you do these tight curves.
No brick road.
No, yeah, it's not brick, it's asphalt.
No fancy houses.
Yeah. You got
Oh, no way.
somewhat fancy houses, but only on one side. Because I think around the same time it is on Lombard.
Okay.
I get untangled. Okay. Let's look in the dark. I'm tripping over the cord here. But yeah, I think it's an old staircase, but then you look out and there's like literally nothing. Is there a way to turn on a light? But the freeway, like that down there, the sound is the freeway. So if there were houses here, they got wiped out by the freeway a long time ago. But yeah, you've got the switchbacks here and the houses on one side and a car coming. Crap. Better get back in the car. Somebody's waiting. Okay. So it's definitely not as scenic as the other Lombard, but it still has got a staircase there, just like the regular Lombard. Yeah, I really want to kind of come back and do a video on this, the other Lombard, because it'd be fascinating to know the history. But so yeah, so I better put my seatbelt on. It's one-way traffic as well, going downhill. Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to have two-way these things. Well, I think let me go through the last few of these comments, and then I probably ought to wrap it up. James Brett for $4.99 says, "Super talking. It was 15 minutes. Walking would have been a while. Why is that sidewalk so weird? I don't know. I feel bad skipping so many comments here." Jeff Rosen Videos, $1.99 says, "Truck only, electric only, self-driving only lanes." I would find that fascinating if you had opposite zero emission lanes. I don't know. I've never heard of anybody proposing that, but that would be an interesting idea. You have Wretched Rob of $4.99 says, "Would you support banning speed limits on highways? We would call it the Max bill. I could use your support." Well, emotionally, while I support that, I think that's fantastic because somebody likes to drive fast. I don't know. I see the point of having. I'm a big supporter of reasonable speed limits. You know, you take the speed that the road's designed for and actually setting it to that. 122 miles an hour, it's a little fast, but I 70. But there are a lot of stretches where 75, maybe even 80 in some places would be okay. But make sure I think have I caught everybody? Anyway, this has been a lot of fun, and absolutely we will do this again. I'll find another fun place and we'll go on another field trip here, and maybe that's what I need to do is when I take a trip someplace where I'm going to make a video about a place, why not hop on and we'll do another live stream. This has been fantastic. So I just end by saying I'm very privileged to probably a good time to stop. The quality is bad. Okay, well, it's been been a real privilege to stream to you guys tonight, and I'll talk to you next time once I figure out how to stop it.